This is your news bulletin from Power 102 Digital.
It is Wednesday, the 20th of November, 2024. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. This is news to 6 a.m. on News Power Digital. Port workers have been ordered back to work following an industrial court injunction. The move has been described as a victory for the nation's economy by the Port Authority. The ruling comes amidst escalating tensions over labor disputes between the port workers and the Port Authority. The interim ex-parte injunction marks a turning point after more than a month of industrial action led by Seamen and Waterfront Workers Trade Union. The matter was heard before the Industrial Court's Heather Seal. Vice President Herbert Sovereign, Chairman of the Essential Services Division Lawrence Achong, His Honor Morton Mitchell, and His Honor Vincent Cabrera. The union was served around 9 a.m. yesterday to appear in court later that day at 1:30 p.m. The matter was expected to be heard on December 6th, when the union will present its case. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley was scheduled to travel to Georgetown, Guyana Tuesday, where he will participate in several meetings convened by the Caribbean Community CARICOM. Dr. Rowley will join regional heads of government for the second CARICOM India Summit and engagement with the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi. The summit will focus on strengthening cooperation in agriculture and food security, health, pharmaceuticals, and science and innovation, among other areas. While in Guyana, Dr. Rowley, in his capacity as chairman of CARICOM's Prime Ministerial Subcommittee on Cricket, will also chair a meeting of that committee. Trinidad and Tobago is being urged to make its $40 million contribution to the Caribbean Community Development Fund. The plea from Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Ralph Gonzalez. It came at the handing over of a 93-room Holiday Inn Express suites to government this week. Media reports indicate the CDF provided at least half of the $60 million used to construct the hotel. Dr. Gonzalez says he's already had discussions with Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley and Jamaican Prime Minister on the issue. He cited the implications which can cause regional governments if they fail to honor these obligations. Former Central Bank Deputy Governor Dr. Terence Farrell says the Prime Minister's comments on the Forex issue have confused him. Speaking as a guest on the Power Breakfast show yesterday morning, Dr. Farrell said in 1993, the country moved deliberately to the float exchange system, which worked beautifully for 20 years. He said the exchange rate was adjusted by the central bank in accordance with the criterion used by many countries. He maintained if there is a decision not to change the exchange rate, then there must be the acceptance that there are consequences to such a decision. Amid reports that many have turned to the black market to purchase Forex, the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago yesterday listed the authorized dealers of Forex in the country. A notice on its website, the Central Bank said 13 companies were licensed authorized Forex dealers in TNT as of September 30th, 2024. The authorized dealers are Answer Bank, Citibank Trinidad and Tobago, First Citizens, CIBC, Caribbean Bank, TNT, GMMB Bank, TNT, RBC Royal Bank, Republic Bank, Scotiabank, Trinidad and Tobago, Answer Merchant Bank, Development Finance Limited, Massive Finance GFC Limited, NCB Merchant Bank TNT, and Export-Import Bank of Trinidad and Tobago, Exim Bank. Additionally, the central bank noted there were 4 companies authorized to operate as Bureau de Change, currency exchange in the country operators. These companies are authorized by the central bank to buy and sell Forex notes and coins, as well as purchase travelers' checks and or conduct Forex conversions, which are incidental to primary remittance businesses. These are Global Exchange Trinidad and Tobago, Grace Kennedy TNT, Massey Remittance Services, and Millennium Finance and Leasing Company Limited. The central bank advised the public that in accordance with the Foreign Exchange Control Act, transaction involving buying, selling, borrowing, or lending of Forex should be conducted only through authorized dealers. Caribbean Airlines has once again been awarded the Airline Passenger Experience Association 4-star major airline rating for 2024, based solely on the ratings of passengers worldwide. CAL says this marks the second year the national airline has achieved this distinction. The Apex Awards are based entirely on neutral, third-party passenger feedback, independently certified and gathered through Apex's partnership with TriPit from Concur, the world's most widely used travel organizing app. For the 2024 awards, nearly 1 million flights were rated by passengers across nearly 600 airlines worldwide, with only 8% of airlines achieving the 4-star ratings. Apex representatives accepted the award on behalf of CAL at the Apex ceremony in Long Beach, California. CAL operates the largest network in the region with a commitment to enhancing connectivity and delivering exceptional customer service. And finally, Google says it will harm customers and businesses if it is forced to sell Chrome, the world's most popular web browser. The U.S. Department of Justice will propose the measure to a judge on Wednesday, Bloomberg has reported. Judge Amit Mitra ruled Google operates an online search monopoly in August, which has been considered what remedies and penalties to impose on the tech giant. And that is news to 6 a.m. right here on News Power Digital. We'll have major news coming up at 7 a.m. Good morning.
Up to date and credible. Power 102 Digital.
It is the 20th day of November. 35 days to Christmas. Just saying. Thank you so much for joining us on the Power Breakfast Show this morning on Power 102 Digital Fullcasting. We just heard from Dr. Paul Richards. We'll hear from Wendell Stephen, Richard Ragoobarsingh. We got in the background, we got Ruben and Shane. Of course, my name is Steve. All right, 26 degrees on both islands. And the Met Office today is saying partly cloudy spells with a few showers will interrupt otherwise hot and sunny conditions. There is a 30 to 40% chance, that is low to medium, of isolated heavy showers and or thunderstorms. All right, so that's what they're saying. Maximum forecast temperature 33 at Piaco, 32 at Crown Point. And volume on the highways, except if you're heading northbound from Couva towards Chicagonas. All right. Good morning to you, Pablo.
Good morning, Steve. Good morning, Wendell.
Morning,
Wendell.
Paul. Good morning, Steve. Morning, Richard. And good morning, Trinidad and Tobago and listeners all over.
Morning to you guys.
Very stressful afternoon and morning, night and morning. So forgive me. I mean, what started out as a really good evening at the Queen's Park Oval just ended with some news that kind of disturbing because it's been going viral. I think I would have shared it with you guys. The fact that former councillor Kent Taylor, age 85, he was the person who actually preceded me in office for St. James West, is missing, and is missing in New York.
I saw that this morning. Yeah. He went to Jamaica Avenue or something.
Yeah, his family put out this notice yesterday that says he went for a walk. He went to visit his family, sister out there, and he went for a walk and they can't find him since November 18th. Today is the 20th.
Wow.
So he's been gone almost 48 hours, So it's a disturbing story that I came home to, you know what I mean? And it just had me up all night. I mean, along with another personal issue, but I wouldn't raise that one on radio. But it's just because Kent Taylor, if anybody knows Kent Taylor as an 80-plus-year-old man walks all over the place. He walks a lot. He walks all over St. James. And I mean, there's never been an incident. I was surprised that he even traveled, because I haven't known Kent to travel in all the years that I've known him. He spent 13 years as the councillor for St. James. And I came right after him. I was his campaign manager. He became my campaign manager, and I served another 14 years there. And Kent was always active. He was part of the executive appointment South, you know what I mean? And he was always willing to help. So to read that last night, of all places, New York, because surely he must have walked out the road thinking, well, okay, I just walking down the road. It's just another walk that he always does in St. James, you know. So I really hope that they find him, you know what I mean? Because I don't know him to be suffering from dementia or anything like that. I mean, at age 80 plus, you know. So it's just an unfortunate story that I came home to last evening, you know. So I really hope that he is found.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Because it's cold in New York. They said he went out the road in a blue navy suit with a hoodie, so which means he recognized it cold, you know. So it's just a sad story that I came home to, as I said.
You know? Well, let's hope for that he's found.
Yeah, I really hope so. You know. I have some birthday greetings today. My son's birthday is tomorrow. I know I won't be on air tomorrow. So he's the next one who stressed me out. But as I said, that's not for the week. But happy birthday, belated birthday greetings to Dane Marie Marshall, who celebrated her birthday yesterday, and Joel Fana. Today is the birthday of Maxine Richards. Happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday to you, Maxine.
Yeah. Felix Kazo, Narina Garcia Ramsamy, whom I know very well. Atiba Wilshire, who used to read news in Power 1 and 2.
Who knows Paul very well in the Parliament.
Well, he's supposed to know Paul well.
Oh, yeah.
Atiba works at the Parliament. Suzette Ragunanan, wife of a very good friend of mine. Bernard Francis, Risa Harewood, Annette Fitzpatrick, and Alexander. They are all celebrating birthdays today, November 20th. Happy birthday to you all.
It is also the birthday of Dr. Nicole Ramlachan.
Oh, okay.
Happy birthday to you, Nikki. We've had her on the program a few times as a guest. So happy birthday to you, Nikki.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was one of the news that, as I say, that stressed me out. After we lost the match at the Oval, but it was such good cricket. We played such good cricket, you know. We had such a good time. So, and I saw Gary Adge. Gary Adge is now back playing cricket, and he has not lost his spark at all.
Was that? He has not lost a pound?
That too, eh? But he has not lost his spark, you know. Yeah. Hi. Yes, Wendy. You would have met us met me through Kent. Yes. Kent is a good soul. Kent is actually October 14th, and I'm October 15th. And as I say, we succeeded one another in office for St. James West, you know. So I mean, we were close. Read that was terrible. Get back to work. Well done, Industrial Court.
Port workers.
They have been ordered back to work by the Industrial Court President Heather Seal yesterday, after, of course, the port would have filed their injunctions and so on. Well, the
I know somebody has 3 containers on the port, shy of a month now, and is unable to get it. Almost a month. And it's like, what madness is this?
You know, the more I read about this case
with the police officers,
the more disgusted I am, the more sick my stomach I feel. And
we'll deal with that after 7 for sure.
I you know, given the report by the outgoing Police Service Commission in their 2023 survey and the continued decline in public trust and confidence in the police service, I don't know. The officers were accused of extorting a group of Sangre Grande businessmen, and the matter was discharged by Master Sarah De Silva in the High Court on November 18th, 2 days ago, because the police failed to comply with court directives, including a timely preparation and prosecution of the case.
Sounds very familiar. Sounds very familiar to me.
The charges were dismissed under Section 3.52 of the Criminal Procedures Rules 2023, which orders or empowers the court to take an action when procedural non-compliance disrupts the justice process. The stand-in police prosecutor could not explain or respond to defense attorney's application for the case to be dismissed. You know, I want somebody to send me the details of that case, please. Because let me tell you something. And in spite of that, apparently the commissioner of police can't answer as to whether or not disciplinary charges, proceedings, I should say, have been initiated against these goodly gentlemen.
So when they on
and the case fall apart because the police failed to exercise their responsibilities in a timely manner.
Himself investigated
So
himself.
police prosecuting police.
Yes.
Case fall apart because police failed to file in a timely manner.
Well, start off with police charging police first. Because DCP Martin, the Deputy Commissioner Suzette Martin, was head of the Professional Standards Bureau at the time, right? When they went to the DPP and the DPP ordered charges, okay? So charges were laid then. And this thing has been happened. This thing was filmed. It was videotaped, you know. It's not just an accusation the businessman making. He show you video evidence. Eh?
Yes.
You understand? And they were all charged. Six of them? Six?
So why shouldn't the public believe hearing this? That the case was allowed to collapse?
You think?
And the police want people to have confidence in them in this country.
Exactly.
And the commissioner is silent on it.
Oh, the silent right through and everything.
You know the default is now, well, the case has been dismissed, so I can't do anything.
Well, they can be recharged, not so. The case hasn't been dismissed. I don't think it has been dismissed.
And who is going to recharge them and follow up the case when they're not the same people who presumably did not exercise their responsibility and the case collapsed? You're bringing in people to do the case of it. Huh?
Well, one of the officers...
When I told you years ago that I have absolutely no confidence in the Professional Standards Bureau, at that time, you disagreed.
Yes, I did.
You've since changed your position in this.
I have because of an experience.
I have no confidence in the Professional Standards Bureau that's reposed in the bosom of the beast.
Yep. One of the officers who has over 11 years of service yesterday said he described the situation as a harrowing betrayal by the very system they served. He said, I am happy that some sort of justice has been served, but I am very despondent. The treatment we endured was nothing short of heartbreaking. There are policemen saying this, eh? So imagine what civilians has had to go through. Eh? Despite these accusations, the officer insisted that the operation was legitimate. This was an official exercise fully documented with witnesses, including a Ministry of National Security interpreter. There was no wrongdoing. Now, mind you, the same DCP, now DCP Suzette Martin, whatever happened to her charge when she was head of PSB? You remember she was also charged?
The traffic issue.
Yeah. Whatever happened to that?
It's still pending.
Police charging police is a waste of time. Police investigating police is a waste of time.
The prosecutor failed to appear in court.
Yeah, boy. Jeez, that age.
And nothing will come out of this on the police leadership.
And when they do it to civilians, they also do not appear in court. They also allow cases to collapse because they know they have no case. But guess what? They don't pay a cent. The civilian, meanwhile, paying an attorney to represent them and going to court every 2 to 3 months. Waste of time. When I critique the police, people say
and they wonder why.
Well, a totin.
Public has such little public trust and confidence with the TTPS. How is this allowed to happen? How is this sort of dereliction of duty allowed to happen with no consequences?
And that's the problem. No consequences. They can do whatever they want.
And conversely, there have been cases documented in the course before. People are wrongly prosecuted vigorously.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I tell all you, I have stories to tell, but I'll tell them down the road. I have a few well.
Good
Really, I
morning
make a
and
line round
congratulations to
about it.
Caribbean Airlines.
What happened to Caribbean Airlines now?
They've been, again, for the second year, awarded 4-star major airline rating by is that Apex? What's the name of the company? Apex is an international organization that does surveys of passenger experiences. And CAL is among the only 8% of airlines achieving a 4-star rating.
Well done, Carl.
I think Tobago also got special mention from Wanderlust.
The Airline Passenger Experience Association 4-star major airline rating for 2024 based solely on passenger feedback worldwide. They sample 1 million passengers from 1 million flights, and the passengers on those flights were rated across 600 airlines worldwide. And only 8% of these 600 airlines were rated 4-star major airline rating. So congratulations to Cal and your continued distinction in this area.
All right. I wonder if that had to do with a survey they were doing at the airport the other day when I was there. But they were only interested in people who were visiting Trinidad, not Trinidadians.
No.
They were out early that morning because that was the last flight I took. I was in the airport by 5 o'clock. And they were there coming around, these ladies with these billboards, these boards now. And they were doing a survey, and I saw them sitting with people for quite a while. So it was an extensive survey. I think they were from the Ministry of Planning, though, if I'm not mistaken. I think they were.
Who's acting Prime Minister?
They didn't say. Hold on. The article must say Dr. Rowley in Ghana for CARICOM.
That must be Minister Young.
Yeah, it's Minister Young. It is. It is. I tell you, let me tell you something.
The budget being prepared again or what?
Hold on. I could point out something to all you. Hold on. I could point out something to all you that all you may not remember. There was a conversations with the Prime Minister after the last budget, not this budget here, the one before. There was a conversation with the Prime Minister that was held, that the Minister of Finance was integral to being there to present, and he was late. Don't you all remember the Prime Minister publicly berating the Minister of Finance when he came late? Didn't you all remember that? And the Minister was apologized to the public and on TV, did they? For being late? Don't you all remember that? It's the first time I've ever heard.
I'm waiting patiently for you to connect the dots, please, but I'm getting more gray hair.
If you get more gray hair, Paul, we
I'm
can't
not connecting any dots. I'm trying to tell you.
Why are you bringing it up?
Because you.
Why are you bringing it up?
So you bring up just now. So if Minister Imbut is in doing budget again, I'm trying to link
because our contention last couple of times was that maybe he was very busy preparing for the budget.
That was what they said the first time.
And that is why the Prime Minister shifted from him being the acting Prime Minister for the first 9 years of this administration, or 8 maybe, to now Minister Young being the de facto acting Prime Minister when Dr. Rowley's out of the country.
And I'm attempting to link something that happened prior.
And that's why I tell you, connect the dots.
So God, it's kind of obvious.
You can't understand?
It's obvious. What's your problem this morning?
I'm not asking for you to be obvious. I'm asking for you to be explicit.
I'm the one supposed to be crabby, not you.
You know I'm not supposed to be crabby?
What are you crabby for? You know how my
The Prime Minister is in Georgetown, Guyana for a CARICOM Heads of Government meeting and an engagement with the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The delegation includes Foreign and CARICOM Affairs Minister Dr. Amory Brown, Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, Reginald Armour, Senior Counsel, and Minister in the Ministry of Legal Affairs, Ragoobarsingh Suklal. All right, Minister of Energy and Energy Affairs, Stuart Young, will act as Prime Minister until Dr. Rowley's return. He's now clearly the de facto acting person, adding fuel to the speculation that he is the heir apparent, being prepared for potential.
But why we even having this discussion? It's kind of obvious, isn't it?
What is kind of obvious?
That he is preferred as the next Prime Minister.
I don't know what is obvious in the PNM or not obvious. You are a member of the PNM, I am not. So you will know better than I.
It's kind of obvious.
We had Dr. Terence Farrell on it.
Huh?
Dr. Terence Farrell says the Prime Minister's comments on the Forex issue continues to confuse him.
Let me tell you something. I must congratulate yourself and Richard Ragoobarsingh for conducting what I think was the best interview we have ever had with anybody of a financial nature. And we have had several. We have interviewed several people in the finance world, right? And Dr. Terence Farrell was by far the best I've ever heard on our station.
Because he's extremely balanced, he's clear and focused in his responses, and his qualifications and experience really impact the analysis of the situation extremely cogently.
And he clearly has no agenda. Yeah. I really enjoyed that interview. I was almost tempted to log on, but I say
you cannot expect to continue to inject to keep the Forex, the exchange rate at that rate without changing your fiscal and monetary policies. And it's true, particularly in the context of when you are making less money and making less US as a country.
Yeah.
It's like pouring water into a bucket that's continuously dripping and draining.
Yeah, but he said something in respect of one of your questions down in the end, where he said, we are not in danger of going to the IMF, and we are not in danger of having a foreign exchange problem just yet. And that, to me, is at the bottom of some of the arrogance, and I'm using that's my word, that we are seeing coming out of some quarters. You understand? Because we are not in that danger, as Dr. Terence Farrell said, right? As yet. It is why we have not taken the hard political decisions that we need to take. Now, Mariano Brown has said some of what Dr. Farrell said yesterday, but Mariano clearly have a problem with Mr. Imbut and Dr. Rowley. So it comes out in his speech. It comes out in his persona. You understand? It comes out in his words. But Dr. Farrell, I'm telling you, I've never heard anybody as crystal clear as that yesterday. Never.
But he did add that while we're not in any close danger of going to the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, that we cannot continue in this way in a sustainable manner.
Right.
Because we keep drawing down on our reserves to maintain the status quo, and that is clearly unsustainable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nah,
he was good.
He's always, to me, very excellent.
And you know why too? He didn't have a problem with anything you all asked him. He laughed off some of the things.
Good morning, Ragoobarsingh. Well, he's a Mount Lambert, so he has a certain distinction about him.
Oh, Lord.
Good morning, guys.
Morning, Richard.
Morning, Richard.
He grew up 2 houses from me, you know that, right?
He lives 2 houses from you?
He grew up.
Eh? But he clearly stayed away from you.
What does that mean? Explain that to me.
No, because he has a humility that you don't have.
I don't have humility.
Richard, help me here.
I'm staying out of that conversation.
Yeah, boy. Good call, Richard.
No, but Dr. Farrell, I'm telling you, I've never heard an interview in terms of finance and how somebody explaining the situation the way he did it yesterday. I've never heard an interview like that, honestly. And as I say, kudos to you guys, because you all would have conducted it. You all would have asked the questions, and the questions the things, even when he deflected from the political responses. He did it in such a clever manner.
But he's not afraid to comment on the political component of government decisions, because government decisions have political components in them. They're not making decisions in a vacuum. They're making decisions in what is going to, there's a balance, I guess, between when you're in that position of what is needed to be done and what is needed to be done to stay in power.
Yeah.
Because if they took the decisions that they clearly have to take at some point, it will have political repercussions.
The only thing I didn't...
He spoke about the issue that we basically a subsidized society.
Yes.
Remove the subsidies now and see what happens.
Yes, that is where the politics comes in.
Yeah, remove the subsidies. Remove the subsidies in a reckless manner and see what happens.
Yeah.
You're going to have repercussions, and they're not ever going to be repercussions that maintain the status quo, because then people will have to endure some level of hardship. More than likely, the grassroots people who usually bear the brunt of the hardship. Because the big shots, that's just all this happened with the big shots is the profit just go from 110 million to 108 million. You know? The profits are erased, you know.
Yes.
Okay.
The only thing he wasn't clear on, because he said it very early in the interview, was about that what happened from 1993 that stopped 20 years later, which points to 2013. That is the part I needed an answer for. What happened in 2013 that changed the issue of the foreign exchange? What happened? And nobody has been brave. Well, nobody has come out and said what exactly happened. You know? Because he pointed to it yesterday in the interview. Because he was I think, deputy governor of the central bank. Wendell Motley was Minister of Finance. Patrick Manning was Prime Minister when the dollar was floated in 1993, right? But he said it changed, whatever changed 20 years later. It worked for 20 years and then something happened. So the date didn't escape.
The government is funding the exchange rate through several different mechanisms, which are drawing down on the country's reserves. Which means we're dipping into our savings, aka heritage and stabilization etal, to maintain the exchange rate. And until we can start to fund it from revenue, increased revenue, that is not a situation that's sustainable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, those issues
are something he said that I always thought about. If you don't, as a government, but I understand the difficult position this government was in, make these changes at the start of a 5-year cycle, it's very difficult.
Yeah.
And the government was in a position where at the start of this 5-year cycle, we were coming out of COVID.
Yeah.
So there was already hardship because of COVID globally. And I guess to make and to restart the economy, or to move the economy back in the direction of growth following COVID, doing those things would have been almost impossible without severe social repercussions.
But he gave a year. You know, he said 2016. It should have started then. He said immediately upon the change of government, that's when it should have started.
And if you come in and you rock the boat immediately, there are also consequences to that.
Well,
because people will say, well, my standard of living changed as well. You're coming, quote unquote. You know. So it's always a balancing act for anybody.
Remember, NAR paid a price for that.
The core of Trinidad and Tobago's problem is that successive administrations have always looked to the oil and, let me just say broadly, the energy sector to save us. And if there is a downturn, all they're basically doing is treading water until there's an upturn again.
Yeah.
I think that's the basic.
That is a classic good example, Richard.
That is the basic, I think, premise of the economics of the country.
Yes.
So in a cycle when it's difficult, you have all of these problems that erupt. In addition, of course, accentuated by the crime situation, which would affect foreign direct investment and even internal investment by businesses and stuff that gets affected. And current successive administrations have been unsuccessful thus far in making a really big dent in the issue of crime. And so that's what you have. So you have a treading of water, so to speak, while you wait for the energy sector to save us. Vis-a-vis operating as if we didn't have the energy sector, then how much do we need to pivot and be innovative in how we adapt to world conditions?
Well,
Start with your education system and how much you're pivoting. And of course, pivoting for a lot in the world today is digitization and coding and all of that. In fact, that boat has been sailing for a while now. And how much are we pivoting and being innovative as a country in terms of STEM, in terms of those kinds of subjects, which is where the future of world economies lie. And that's our problem.
Yeah. Well, guys, to Patrick Manning's credit, we may not always agree with some of the proposals he made, but he had a plan. One, the smelter that they criticize and cuss him and say all kind of things about it that he wanted to bring here. The shipbuilding plant thing down at Chagaramas, the issue at Tamana Park that can't seem to get anywhere, the financial capital of the Caribbean, and so all of that. Patrick Manning had plans and things, and they literally run that man to his grave. You understand?
You have all of these service industries too, Wendell, because financial services, you have human services in the form of tourism and art and culture. And we say it and we pay lip service to it, but to get even support or the bureaucratic loopholes that you have to jump through for some of those things, it's ridiculous.
What we don't have in this country, remember the key coined the term, let's go down the road together. Well, they even criticize the man for that. How you could go down the road and, this country tiring. Yeah?
We should open the phone lines, and I'm glad Dr. Farrell also from his position articulated this stupid decision. I don't want to say collectively, by some to run Sandals from Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes, I heard him speak about that too.
And it was really a really stupid decision. And people not understanding what that meant for not only Tobago, but Trinidad and Tobago.
Yep.
But that ties in.
It was really such an example of how politics gets in the way of progress in this country.
Correct. Opposition politics.
Okay? Politics gets in the way of, and unfortunately, the government, to me, wasn't as proactive as they should have been in selling the benefits of that before and dealing with the misinformation about the project that eventually caused the collapse of the project.
Let me tell you something.
But there was a lot of misinformation about the project floating.
Plenty. I had the pleasure of visiting a Sandals for the very first time during that time that Sandals was proposing to come in. I went to Sandals Antigua. And I remember I did videos and so on, and I sent it to Dr. Roy. He said, make sure and share this and talk about this on radio. And I did it. And I was upset when the government backed out of that. You know, what the
government didn't back out, Sandals backed out.
But Stewart backed out.
Sandals backed out.
They backed out because of all these silly criticisms and
I said, look at first world jurisdictions, when a project, a massive project is coming to a location in the US in wherever state, you see billboards, this is coming, this is the benefit. So you start a public relations campaign that positions the project to people who are in the area can know what the benefits are going to be. Because there's always going to be objection to huge projects by somebody.
Naturally.
Especially by environmentalists. You have to prepare for that with your selling of the project to the community and to the country at large. You can't just presume, well, I say it coming and we will accept it. It's always going to be, especially in our environment.
Yeah. We have a call, gentlemen. Good morning.
Yes, good morning to you, gentlemen and thing. Wendell, I agree with you, but that was a perfect interview where the interviewee or the person being interviewed never failed to answer a question. He didn't dance around it, and he was always on point, especially when he spoke about that Sandals issue.
Yeah.
And my only issue with the press, especially like Newsday, Guardian, and the Express, why are they making it look as if Dr. Rowley is the only person would benefit from the salary review committee recommendations, and also he spoke about the salary review commission. It is the position and not the individual.
Yes.
And all these newspapers going around trying to sell it. The Prime Minister is giving himself a raise, and I found it on the chair and disingenuous. Thanks, gentlemen.
Yeah, take care. He was very clear on that issue of that raise too.
I think the cabinet will actually approve it.
Of course they will. Good morning.
Good morning, guys.
Morning.
Did anybody see the interview? Well, not the interview, on CNC3 last night on the news, where when they showed the 7 officers were freed of these charges, or the charges dropped. There was one of the 7 police officers. He spoke to the media he said he don't want his name called or face shown. And he said he could not understand how that matter could have reached the court, how the PSB could have charged them when they were given instructions by their seniors to go and raid that place. Because I think that place, the bar, whatever it was, they were running the Chinese playway. And they got instructions. So I am saying, but wait, he said, y'all try and connect the dots. We will go in, 7 of us will go into a place, pull up with a police vehicle in uniform and go in there and steal, take money because they're showing you where they would I say, but this is crazy.
Caller, can I just interject? I don't think people are upset because they have adjudged the officers innocent or guilty, People are upset because the case collapsed because of a lack of exercise of responsibility of prosecutors.
Well, you see that? They have to stop having police being prosecutors. That is the first step. You see that? That is nonsense. But my thing is, that incident, I don't know how it reached the court, because if you were given instructions to go and raid a house, how you could come and be charged? This is my question this morning based on what the officer said. So whatever came out, look, this country in a hot mess. All you try and fix this thing because
we had to fix it.
Nowhere fast.
Is we putting to fix it?
Me fixing nothing.
Is we putting to fix it?
No, I'm talking about who in a charge. And let me tell you something. I never know going to the IMF was a good thing. I heard Ralph Marange on a program saying Barbados went to the IMF and look how they've diversified the economy.
Who you said say it?
He said, is Dr. Farrell you said?
Who you said you say it? Who said it?
Ralph, he followed the chair. So Dr. Rowley, see if you could go to you're accusing Dr. Rowley of not diversifying the economy. So Dr. Rowley,
what political party was he?
Go to the IMF, and then you go diversify the economy. Lord Jesus.
What allegiance was he espousing from this week? Because that's changed regularly with him.
Yeah, it's changed. He have a butter banker, trust me.
Yeah, but you don't need to have a banker because he slips sides as he wants. What you have a banker for when you're ready to go on this side, when you're ready to go on that side?
But Dr. Farrell addressed that issue of the IMF yesterday and saying that we were not, because we asked him that, how far are we from that?
Mm-hmm.
And he said pretty far.
Yeah.
In terms of
even in the same galaxy. We're very far from that.
In terms of
the IMF is when you have run out of foreign reserves and you cannot pay your bills.
Mm-hmm.
Richard, you have papers?
Of course I do, Paul.
Today the poll is yours.
Okay.
We're using your poll today. We're using, we're feeling a little conservative.
I'm tired from playing cricket and I have cricket again tonight.
Are you using your poll to play cricket?
Yes.
Let's not go down that rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
The Tobago Newsday for today, Wednesday, November 20th, 2024.
How? Is that baseball you're playing?
So, SWWTU hauled before industrial court. The headline, port protests halted. That's the main headline on the Newsday this morning. 160 claims made over Tobago oil spill. And members of the Ex-Servicemen Association marched from Coffee Street to Harris Promenade in San Fernando on Tuesday to commemorate International Men's Day. And that's the main picture. It looks like a very vociferous small group. They look very animated in that picture. Red Force rely on top order. Teams gear up for Super 50 semis as Red Force rely on top order. Santa Cruz RC win primary schools East Zone under 15 title. And the main picture is that of St. Joseph Convent, Port of Spain's London Million as she tussles with Bishop Ansi High School's Kayana De Loris for possession of the ball during the SSFL Coca-Cola Intercol Girls North Zone semi-final at the St. Mary's College grounds on November 19th. The Trinidad and Tobago Guardian for this morning. Front page, get back to work is the headline. Industrial court issues injunction against port workers. DCP orders report after corruption case against cops collapses. And celebrating men is the picture. Tyron McDougall gives thumbs up as he participates in the Trinidad and Tobago Ex-Servicemen Association's International Men's Day Parade on Harris Promenade, San Fernando. So that's in the main picture, as in the Newsday. On the back page, SSFL seeks legal advice. Decision on Zoom. St. Benedict's College delayed. SSFL seeks legal advice. That's the main headline. And the main picture is also, St. Joseph Convent, Port of Spain. Anushka Persad left the vice for possession of the ball from Bishop Ansi High School's Dine Bradshaw during the SSFL Coca-Cola Intercol Girls North Zone semi-final. Did they give the outcome of the match? Oh, well, St. Joseph Convent's won 5-1. And that's it for the front and the back of the Guardian. Moving on to the Daily Express this morning. The front page of the Trinidad and Tobago Daily Express. Port workers blocked. So all these papers went with that story of that injunction. Industrial court grants PATT, the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, an injunction preventing protest action. So that's the main headline. Former PP Labour Minister to government honored 12% wage deal. Bard, Michael Anisette left. President of the Seamen and Waterfront Workers Trade Union and attorney Nairi Alfonso, who represented the union and port workers, leave the industrial court on St. Vincent Street in Port of Spain yesterday. That's the main picture that the Express went with. On the back page, welcome relief. Wassa repairs road after fiery protest. Frustrated presale parents want online classes. And Cyprian Mayor under fire as no confidence motion looms. Police probe into missing materials. And of course, in sports in the Express, forced to awaken TNT Battle Barbados pride in Super 50 semifinals showdown. Jablote makes return to TT at PFL. Reggae Boys crash out of Nations League. And SSFL seeks legal advice on Garcia. That's it for our three dailies this morning in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago.
Well done, Richard. Well done.
Yeah, well done. All right, so let's get the poll where we asked you yesterday, should there be a TTPS investigation into the recent issue at the Water and Sewerage Authority, WASA? Results are in. 100% said yes. Everybody said
Well,
yes.
I have two suggestions to you. One is the collapsed case with the police officers, and one is the industrial court order in the port workers back to work. Either one.
Police officers.
All right. Yeah, should charges be relayed against them after the case collapsed?
I have both types up. One is, do you agree with the industrial court decision ordering port workers back on the job? And the second one is, should the case against the 7 officers be reopened after the case collapsed?
So,
I
Richard,
like latter.
break the tie.
Either one is fine. Just close your eyes and choose.
He's a nature's boy.
Because
Make
we
up
have
your
our
mind
guest
on
next
one,
hour, we should go with the second one.
See that?
He's just giving. Which one, Richard?
I thought Steve just chose.
All right, Steve chose one.
We have some guests. We're going to deal with that in the next hour, so we should go with that poll.
Okay, all right. Okay, good. Well, see, Steve made sense there.
Sure.
All right. Should the case against the 7 officers be reopened after the case collapsed? Yes or no? 222-8255. North Americans, 866-525-1099 on Facebook, WhatsApp, YouTube. Send us a message. All right. WhatsApp is 318-1021. Should the case against the 7 officers be reopened after the case collapsed?
So you have one poll to choose something.
All right. Yes or no? John Cato. John Cato says yes. Jaron John Joseph, yes. Bobby, morning, Bob. Oop, Bob, what did you say there? Hell yes. Okay. Good morning, Captain Ron Sankofa. Captain Ron says no. All right. Someone is saying, who is this? Says it's snowing in London.
I saw that picture. I was doubting it,
Wow. Okay. Let's see. Roger Seawing says yes. Look at votes there. So we did that. John Cato. Michael Robinson says yes. Anthony Miguel, yes. Johnson Noel, yes. Slick Money Grip, yes, 100%. Rennie Devines, aka Strong, says yes. Vianney Warwood, no. Wayne Bennett, yes. Shuma Paul, yes. CJ in New York says yes. DL, yes to the poll. David Nelson, yes.
DL, what are DL for? Down low? What do you mean?
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen. Before I vote, permit me to wish my son, Ronnie Gomes from Missouri, Kansas City, birthday today. This is coming from his father, his sister Lori, and his brother-in-law Jeffrey. My answer is no.
Right. Dre out in Rio Claro says yes. Lester Craigswell, yes. Gregory Bauer, yes. Should the case against the 7 officers be reopened after the case collapsed? Yes or no? All right. Gregory, okay, I did Gregory Bauer. Okay. WhatsApp 318-1021. Direct numbers to the studio. Locally, toll free, should say, 866-525-1099 or 222-8255. Hazel Will. Morning, Hazel.
That's a
Watching
new name.
on YouTube says yes. You want all those watching us on Me TV, M&E TV. All right. Should the case against the 7 officers be reopened after the case collapsed? We're going to discuss that next hour. We have 2 guests on. Miss Ingrid, Tucson, Arizona. Yes, absolutely. 100% to the poll. Lorna, morning, Lorna. Indy, Carly. Yes. Southman. Yes.
All right, DL. I look forward to seeing you.
Beauty Culture says yes. Patricia Defoe, yes. Good morning, caller.
gentlemen.
Morning.
Locked on at home and abroad. To waste more time? No.
You're muted, Paul.
Where's your real scene? You didn't tell me good morning?
No, she went straight into it.
Yeah.
It's taken a good hour for her to wake up, you know.
Yeah, it's used
Up north says no. Abigail, morning, Abby. Hope all is well. Long time.
No one is judging the officers, you know. The issue is how the case collapsed.
Yes.
Yeah, imagine that.
Well, DCP
Cheryl Henry says no.
DCP Martin has called for an investigation because she was the head of PSB at the time.
And that tells you a lot.
Yeah.
And that tells you a lot.
Yes.
You didn't lose some of these votes here, you know, like Andre Renault, who says yes. Julia S. Batiste says yes. Good morning, yes. Tiso Mac says yes.
Tiso Mac.
DL, ha ha ha, no, not Donglo. Just my first and last name. Beauty Culture, yes. Patrick.
Cheryl Henry says no.
Abigail Brickson, well, no. Cheryl Henry, hell no.
Wayne Bennett says yes. I did that. Okay. Mrs. R. Morning, Mrs. R. says no.
You know, as looking at
Adams also says no.
I like cooking shows, and I was looking at Top Chef Canada last night, and only to hear somebody say, "Oh God, we are Shadow Benny, are happy." That's really good, you know.
So these can't cook without Shadow Benny, eh?
You're damn right about that.
Oh God, look, we are Shadow Benny in the kitchen in Canada. And I said, that had to be a Trini.
Had to be.
And she said, sorry, it's not true.
Anthony from Toronto says yes to the poll.
You have to go back to Ben J. Singh also.
Yeah, I know going back on we did Esther Adams saying no. Ben J. Singh says yes. Morning, Abby. Carol Guevara says no.
I got all those already. I've been on that.
Okay. Alistair Hart says yes.
But we are going to be speaking to Minister Scotland and an attorney next hour, not so?
Yeah. Senior Counsel Larry Lalla.
Two senior counsel will be speaking to.
Yeah.
Yeah, big yes.
All your pain, funds out to the corporate push for this month. I get senior counsels, you had a pain.
You would know.
The rate's gone up, you know.
You would know.
Rates went up for sure.
Alibu White says yes.
Actually, I have to pay Keith Scotland. I have to take him by Ali's doubles. That was the requirement.
You sure they have enough doubles?
You know that public officials are not allowed to take inducements. You know that, right?
Should the case against the 7 officers be reopened after the case collapsed? That's our poll this morning. Don't be distracted by the small talk of my other co-hosts. We are still.
Alibu White says yes. Beefy Smith in beautiful Goodwood, Tobago.
I would imagine since you're get more relaxed, you're getting more cranky. What happened? You're retired, not relaxed. Huh? Just relax and breathe.
Gentlemen, let's get into our major news.
Go back to your bed at 8:00 in the morning.
You don't have to go to that stressful building in town.
Exactly.
That building never give me stress.
That building never give you stress? So how come it does give me stress?
You get different kind of stress.
I don't know. That wasn't supposed to be for radio.
All right. Well, gentlemen, let's get into our major news. Evie is in.
This is your news bulletin from Power 102 Digital.
Port workers have been ordered back to work following an industrial court injunction. The Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago lists the authorized dealers of foreign exchange in the country. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley leaves for CARICOM meetings in Guyana, and Trinidad and Tobago urged by St. Vincent Prime Minister to contribute its $40 million to the CDF. Details in a moment. This is news to 7 o'clock on Power 102 Digital. I'm Avril Sintel-Bab. Good morning. Port workers have been ordered back to work following an industrial court injunction. The move has been described as a victory for the nation's economy by the Port Authority. The ruling comes amidst escalating tensions over labor disputes between port workers and the Port Authority. The interim ex parte injunction marks a turning point after more than a month of industrial action led by the Seamen and Waterfront Workers Trade Union. The matter was heard before Industrial Court President Heather Seal, Vice President Herbert Soverall, Chairman of the Essential Services Division Lawrence Achong, His Honor Morton Mitchell, and His Honor Vincent Cabrera. The union was served around 9 a.m. yesterday to appear in court later that day at 1:30 p.m. The matter is expected to be heard on December 6th when the union will present its case. However, SWWTU President General Michael Anisette criticized the Port Authority's approach, stating that the situation could have been resolved through dialogue with the union rather than resorting to legal action. Anisette said the union would respect the court's judgment and await the written orders. Works and Transport Minister Rohan Sinanan described the court's decision as a victory for Trinidad and Tobago, emphasizing the importance of resuming operations at the port. The industrial action, which persisted for more than 6 weeks, caused significant disruptions to businesses and critical sectors of the economy. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley was scheduled to travel to Georgetown, Guyana yesterday, where he will participate in several meetings convened by the Caribbean community. Dr. Rowley will join regional heads of government for the second CARICOM India Summit and engagement with Prime Minister of India Narendra Modi. The summit will focus on strengthening cooperation in agriculture and food security, health and pharmaceuticals, and science and innovation, among other areas. While in Guyana, Dr. Rowley, in his capacity as chairman of the CARICOM Prime Ministerial Subcommittee on Cricket, will also chair a meeting of the committee. Later this week, Prime Minister Rowley, who is the lead head with responsibility for crime and security, will participate in CARICOM's second regional symposium on violence as a public health issue. The delegation, which will accompany the Prime Minister, includes the Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, Dr. Emery Brown, Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, Reginald Amo SC, and Minister in the Ministry of Legal Affairs, Renuka Sagram Singh Suklal. Minister of Energy and Energy Industries and Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, Stuart Young SC, will act as Prime Minister until Dr. Rowley's return. Trinidad and Tobago is being urged to make its $40 million contribution to the Caribbean Community Development Fund. The plea comes from Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Ralph Gonzalez. It came at the handing over of the 93-room Holiday Inn Express and Suites to the government this week. Media reports say the CDF provided at least half of the $60 million used to construct the hotel. Dr. Gonzalez says he has already had discussions with Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley and the Jamaican Prime Minister on the issue. He also cited the implications which can arise if regional governments fail to honor their obligations.
If we don't have these compensatory mechanisms, CARICOM will not be held together because we will be unequally yoked. The meeting earlier this year of CARICOM, I told the Prime Minister of Jamaica and I told the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago that if they do not put in the resources, we're going to have problems in CARICOM. Trinidad is supposed to put in a number in this replenishment close to $40 million US, and we have to get that money. Otherwise, how are we going to allow your products to come in from Trinidad in here duty-free?
Former Central Bank Deputy Governor Dr. Terence Farrell says the Prime Minister's comments on the Forex issue continue to confuse him. Speaking as a guest on the Power Breakfast Show on Tuesday morning, Dr. Farrell said in 1993, the country moved deliberately to a float exchange system, which worked beautifully for 20 years. He said the exchange rate was adjusted by the central bank in accordance with the criterion used by many countries. He maintained if there is a decision not to change the exchange rate, then there must be the acceptance that there are consequences to such a decision.
So if you decide that you are not changing your exchange rate, you want to keep it fixed, then you have to make adjustments in your economy to external shocks. The burden of it has to fall on fiscal policy, that is on the budget, and it has to fall on monetary policy. We had a shock in 2015 where gas prices fell sharply. All of the prognostications, which turned out to be true, is that in fact those prices were going to remain low. So the shock was what we call a permanent shock. It was structural. It wasn't something that would change in a few months, and therefore it required adjustment.
He said the government is funding the exchange rate through several different mechanisms which are drawing down the country's reserves.
We have run up our external debt for 9 years. We have run up our domestic debt for 9 years, and we have run down our foreign exchange reserves from $11 billion down to $5.5 billion. And we have used up part of our Heritage and Stabilization Fund. That is how we've dealt with the adjustment.
You are listening to news on Power 102 Digital to 7 o'clock. Amid reports that many have turned to the black market to purchase foreign exchange, the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago yesterday listed the authorized dealers of foreign exchange in the country. In a notice on its website, the central bank said 13 companies were licensed as authorized foreign exchange dealers in TNT as at September 30th, 2024. The authorized dealers are Answer Bank, Citibank of Trinidad and Tobago, First Citizens Bank, CIBC Caribbean Bank, Trinidad and Tobago, JMMB Bank, TNT, RBC Royal Bank, Trinidad and Tobago, Republic Bank, Scotia Bank, Trinidad and Tobago, Answer Merchant Bank, Development Finance Limited, Massey Finance GFC Limited, NCB Merchant Bank, Trinidad and Tobago, and the Export-Import Bank of Trinidad and Tobago, or Exim Bank. Additionally, the central bank noted there were 4 companies authorized to operate as Bureau de Charge or Bureau de Change operators. These companies are authorized by the central bank to buy and sell foreign currency notes and coins, as well as purchase travelers' checks and or conduct foreign exchange conversions, which are incidental to primary remittance business. The authorized Bureau de Change companies are Global Exchange Trinidad and Tobago, Grace Kennedy Trinidad and Tobago, Massey Remittance Services Trinidad Limited, Millennium Finance and Leasing Company Limited. Global Exchange and Millennium Finance operate currency exchange kiosks at the Piarco International Airport, while Grace Kennedy is parent company of Grace Kennedy Money Services, the company which facilitates Western Union money transfer as well as FX trader services. Massey has its own FX trader service, which is occasionally tied to the MoneyGram money transfer service offered at some of its Massey stores branches. The central bank advised the public that, in accordance with the Exchange Control Act, transactions involving the buying, selling, borrowing, or lending of foreign currency should only be conducted through authorized dealers. Well, finally, here is weather news for the period today till midnight. Trinidad and Tobago, partly cloudy spells with a few showers will interrupt otherwise hot and sunny conditions. There is a low to medium chance of isolated heavy showers or thunderstorms. Nighttime mostly fair despite isolated showers. Please note, in or near heavy showers or thunderstorms, gusty winds are likely and street or flash flooding likely in areas so prone. You can expect a temperature high of 33 degrees Celsius at Piarco International Airport and 32 degrees Celsius at Crown Point in Tobago. Currently, it is 26 degrees Celsius at Piarco and 28 degrees Celsius at Crown Point. Recapping your headlines to 7 o'clock, port workers have been ordered back to work following an industrial court injunction. The Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago lists the authorized dealers of foreign exchange in the country. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley leaves for CARICOM meetings in Guyana, and Trinidad and Tobago urged by St. Vincent Prime Minister to contribute its $40 million to the CDF. I'm Avril Sindhilbab. That was news to 7 o'clock on Power 102 Digital. You can expect more news in detail at 12 noon, and at 8 o'clock there is an update coming your way. For more details, log on to power102fm.com.
Up to date and credible. Power 102 Digital.
Alrighty, thank you so much, Avril, for our major news. You could join her again. Come at 8 o'clock this morning for our news brief. All right, and then major news again at noon alongside Sir Charles. Quickly, let's see what's happening on highways and byways. Anything to tell you about? Nah, just traffic everywhere. Nothing to upset your day about. Will make you reach late too quick. All right. All right, so let's see if we have any more votes here or question this morning. Should the case against the 7 officers be reopened after the case collapsed? That was our poll. Let's see. It did Beefy Smith. Kenny in Harlem says yes to the poll. Eric Nicholson says yes. Ian Robley, no. David Wares says no. Michael Oliver says yes. Let's see on WhatsApp. We have Val. Morning, Val says no. Cascade St. Anne's says yes. Albuquerque, New Mexico. Good morning to you, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Says yes. And who is in Albuquerque, New Mexico? Patsy. Morning, Patsy. Have a taco for me. All right. Right. So that's it.
Richard, you there?
I'm always here.
What that name Patsy remind you of? When you hear Patsy.
And Auntie Patsy.
My aunt.
Okay.
I had an Auntie Patsy.
Yeah, I had an aunt called Patsy too, Auntie Patsy.
Everybody had an Auntie Patsy.
Yeah.
My Aunt Patsy was the youngest of the 5 sisters. All right, our poll this morning. Should the case against the 7 officers be reopened after the case collapsed? We had 55 people voting on the poll in the allotted time. Of the 55 people, 42 of you said yes, that the case should be reopened. 42 said yes, 13 said no.
Thank you, 55 people, for ensuring my poll was a success today. I don't know how else to kindly put that.
Dexter Ramirez just snuck in and said yes.
42 people said yes, and 13 people said no, for a total of 55. Of course, you can continue to vote on this poll throughout the day through our programming, and we'll give you the final result tomorrow morning, which will be Thursday, believe it or not, already.
Vincent out in Birmingham, UK says, it's snowing.
Yeah, it actually is. That's good. I saw a post too about that place is in Alaska, where for the next 65 days they won't have a sunrise.
Yeah, that happens every year.
Isn't that amazing?
That's like your heart.
Well, yeah. This is as dark a place as you could possibly want to come right now.
Precisely. That's what I mean.
Yep. Don't venture there, no?
All right, where's our guest?
Anyway, just quickly, you all are invited to come to the Queen's Park Oval. Well, we started our sojourn last night. We'll be there tonight and tomorrow again, but cricket is going up until the 27th of November. So just drop in. It's a time to just come into the Oval. You don't have to pay. There's a bar, there are people selling stuff, doubles and all kind of things. Just come in and enjoy the ambience of the Queen's Park Oval and watch some good cricket. And meet some nice people too, you know. One of the players on our team is actually the head of MPAT, Dr. Singh, Neil Singh. Really nice guy. Come here. Well, sometimes we have to loan him out because when you hear somebody fall down on the next side with a pain, it's Dr. Singh that's had to run off the field and go and attend to it. You understand? So just come in. You'll see Ted Mondy, you'll see Curtis Rod, you'll see Trevor Chanpak and the Hay brothers. You'll see a lot of people.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning, Minister. How are you?
I am doing fantastic, gentlemen.
Wonderful. Of course, our guest, Minister Keith Scotland, is joining us this morning.
Senior counsel, don't forget.
Senior counsel as well.
Yeah. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us, though, by the way.
Good morning.
You're very welcome, Mr. Khan, Mr. Stevens, Mr. Ragoobarsingh.
I told them the
Senator Richards is also here.
Senator Richards, good morning.
Papa, I get ignored, yes?
No separation of the houses.
Separation of powers. I like that. That was a
I hope we're not on air.
We are on air, by the way.
That is why you're seeing
that face.
Wow.
That is why you're seeing
Thank you.
On your feet. You understand? I see you're looking casual like the boss of the country.
No, sir. I was called out of my normal work. I started work at 3 a.m. this morning, and I will be heading in Not every day you feel for the shirt and tie, but I'll be heading in shortly.
Very well. Anyway, lots to discuss this
Well,
morning.
thank you.
Yes,
Thank
there
you for
is.
joining us.
Shall we start with the now front page story of the collapse of the case? The DCP, who was then in charge of the Professional Standards Bureau, has called for an investigation. That's Suzette Martin, and the situation where the prosecutor seemingly failed to appear, leading to the collapse of the case. And again, I stated this earlier, but this is not about judging the officers innocent or guilty, but the fact that there seem to be anomalies in the process and people didn't fulfill their obligations, so the case collapsed. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, it's not really an anomaly. It is what transpired, and as I understand it, the officers were discharged pursuant to the Administration of Justice Indictable Proceedings Act, known as AJIPA. And what happened, with my understanding of the law, is that the prosecution, the police, they were ordered to disclose certain items because the items they were ordered to disclose, that would have represented the case that the police had to bring forward against the officers who were accused, and the prosecution failed to comply with those orders. Now, the significance of the orders was that these orders represented things to do in relation to scheduling orders. What is a scheduling order? Under JIPA, the master who conducts his or her court gives a schedule of timing where the prosecution are supposed to do certain things. And in this case, I would suspect it was disclose all disclosable material, and particular disclose documents that the prosecution intended to rely on at the sufficiency hearing. And those documents would have been put, in essence, the statements from the witnesses that the prosecution said would have them establish their case. It seems that the prosecution did not comply with those orders and disclose those documents. And then, if that was the case, at the sufficiency hearing, gentlemen, then the master would have had no evidence, nothing before her, in order to see if the prosecution, or to determine that the prosecution had made out a prima facie case and discharged the officers. Let me, for the purposes of this conversation, let the public know what is a sufficiency hearing. Under Section 19A1 of AJIPA, a sufficiency hearing is as follows. The attendance under Section 19, the master is, and let me get the appropriate section. A master shall hold a sufficiency hearing to determine whether there is sufficient evidence to establish a prima facie case of an indictable offense on the indictment. So let me repeat it. A master shall hold a sufficiency hearing to determine whether there is sufficient evidence to establish a prima facie case of any indictable offense on indictment. So what happened? The master is now holding this sufficiency hearing to see whether there's a case. But at that hearing, the documents that were supposed to be presented to the master were not presented. In those circumstances, there would not have been any evidence before the master because nothing was produced, and therefore there was nothing to establish a prima facie case. But it doesn't stop there. The master thereafter, from what I have gleaned in the public domain, acted then pursuant to Section 24.1 of AJIPA. And Section 24.1 of AJIPA reads, subject to Section 25.1 and 2, where after reviewing the evidence submitted by the prosecutor and the accused, a master finds that there is insufficient evidence to establish a prima facie case of any indictable offense on the indictment, the master shall discharge the accused, and any recognizance taken in respect of the charge shall be void. So it seems then that Section 19 came into play, Section 25 came into play, where the master had the ability in law to discharge the accused because not insufficient, no evidence was produced before the master at this sufficiency hearing. So that is what, in my respectful understanding, occurred relative to this charge.
The clarity of your explanation raises two issues in my head.
Yes.
Neither of which are good. One, charges were laid against 7 officers, right?
Yes.
In a matter where they are alleged to have committed X and Y. And these officers have, by the charges being laid, had question marks raised about their characters. Correct?
Go on.
And because I'm presuming, police prosecutor did not comply with the requirements of a JIPA that you've outlined, the master, of course, followed the procedure of law and dismissed the case. So that am I making any mistakes here?
No evidence was presented.
No evidence presented. So
that's the only step you missed. No
right.
evidence was
presented, and the master dismissed the case. So if you look at it from the perspective of the officers, why did you put me through this?
Mm-hmm.
Right? On the other, yeah, because I mean, at the end of the day, they think they have the right to say justice has been served. We've been exonerated. The case has been dismissed. We've been exonerated because no evidence has been submitted to support the charges that were laid against us. Right? And the public has a particular perception of us, even in the absence of a case going through.
So stick a pin right there.
Let me finish the second part, Wendell, first.
Mm-hmm.
The other side of it that people are looking at is that if there were a case to be proffered, because getting to the point of charges being laid against somebody is a serious step.
Yeah.
Right?
That's where I wanted to stick the pin.
Somebody may have dropped the ball. Mm-hmm. And either way, it doesn't look good.
Yeah. So let me add this into what Paul is asking, Minister. Because evidence would have
Paul hasn't asked anything. He has made 2 statements.
Well, all right. Well, let me add to what the statements he's been making. Lord, you're here. We here in court this morning, guys. Just remember that. This man don't make joke. Let me add to his statement. The fact that they were charged would not have meant that evidence was proffered in the first place to solicit the charges in the first place?
Well, there must have been, but I think that in Senator Richards' submissions, the line that draws traction is that somewhere in the process, someone dropped the ball. Mm-hmm. That is the nub. That is the crux of the matter. Now, gentlemen.
But this is not uncommon, Minister. Yes. Because you would have practiced in the courts of Trinidad and Tobago for a number of years. And is this uncommon?
I am not sure that I want to speak of the commonality or lack thereof, but it is not by any means novel. But what I do want to say, gentlemen, is in the process, there are avenues of recourse for the prosecution. I'm not wanting to proffer any evidence, but just put it out there in the public so the public can understand that things are not, it is not totally helpless. What happens is that one, there is an ability to appeal the matter. There is certainly an ability to appeal the matter. And then there is the recourse that the prosecution has to go and come again. In other words, because the matter has not been decided on the merits, there is an avenue for the prosecution to relay the charges. Now, I don't wish to get into the nitty-gritties of it, but in order to explain to the public, because the public, there are issues there of public trust, and that is I think the focus why you would have brought me here.
Public trust.
Yes. Because what the public may very well take a view, well, what we see here on the face of it without knowing anything is the police or the prosecution failing to present evidence against policemen who are charged, and mind you, who have the presumption of innocence before them, but the perception could be out there. So I'm saying, in order to bring a full picture before the public and in the public domain, there are two avenues of recourse to the prosecution at this stage. One, they can venture an appeal to the Court of Appeal to overturn the decision of the master, having read what I have about the matter and having read the law. If what transpired is how I outlined it, then they would have to cross the hurdle at the Court of Appeal to show that the master was plainly or palpably wrong, or they can now go and relay the charges, and that has its other pitfalls as we are engaging, and this is a serious conversation and law we're having here, that will raise issues that the defense will know that might be available to them. But the prosecution, all is not lost. There are avenues of recourse, two avenues of recourse according to the law.
Is it then, Minister, that the courts are maybe finally or subliminally sending messages to the police that, listen, stop coming and wasting our time, that we are tired now of police coming and wasting time, not showing up in court, not providing the evidence as recommended as ordered by the magistrate or master in this case? Is it that the court is sending a message that we have had enough?
The court sent that message.
Sorry, Richard?
I said the court has always sent that message in certain cases.
But Mr. Ragoobarsingh, I'm very happy that you have put on your attorney hat, because as I said, this is by no means novel, and the courts have in several matters, and the Court of Appeal has laid down the guidelines where a matter can or ought to be dismissed before either a magistrate, who are now called district judges, or a master, and the principles still apply. Those principles would be: 1, whether the matter was set for trial; 2, what is the history of the matter in relation to compliance; 3, whether the witnesses were warned and present for the trial; 4, what was the conduct of the defense in terms of compliance in the matter; 5, the public interest. All these are things that would have been taken into account.
You see why nobody never questioned your senior counsel status?
Pardon me?
You see why nobody ever questioned your senior counsel status? I'm just listening to him having anxiety attacks of if I were to face you in court. But I would like you to. Just a question, because you made a statement just now. Do you agree that based on what you've described there and the serious question about public trust and confidence, that you would support an investigation into what happened regarding this case?
The answer is yes, but I like to be practical. I like to find a solution. I have said to you all, and someone, I think it's Mr. Stevens said that in order to charge, there must have been evidence in the first place. Yes? Correct. If we start on that premise and we agree on that premise, it means then that the evidence is there. And Mr. Richards, Senator Richards, I'm now pulling from your submission that you have said, well, maybe somebody dropped the ball. If you take those two statements and you combine them, what you have was that there was evidence, somebody dropped the ball, and add my statement, which is, look, there's a presumption of innocence. But the issue of public trust and confidence remains. Here's why. Because the matters, and these are serious matters, these are contemporaneous matters in engaging the public attention, matters such as extortion, which is demanding by menaces. And I'm not at all speaking about the merits of the matter. So much so, gentlemen, that you know that an extortion unit has been established since the 11th of October in the police force, headed by ACP Richard Smith. So it means then that there's a serious public interest element in this matter. Before we go to investigation, I have given two avenues. I have outlined in this conversation two avenues. I would like either simultaneously or before, and timeliness is important. I would like I would think that the persons involved may very well want to explore either the first avenue, which is going to the Court of Appeal, or the second avenue, which is relaying the charges and relying on the evidence that they had in the first place. Whilst that is done, of course you can have a post-mortem on what transpired, but what transpired does not address the issue of the public confidence in in matters and in the prosecutorial arm as it relates to police officers.
Yeah.
You may very well hear comments such as, well, if it were civilians, this may not happen. That is not the truth, because it has happened with civilians. But those comments will come. And I have noted, gentlemen, I'm just saying that sometimes on social media, comments that are there are really unsupported by any substrata of reality. And if we don't put it up there, then the public will not be informed. And I'm very grateful for this opportunity to bring my little 2 pence that I know about the matter to the fore, so at least we can have some aspect of clarity and have a meaningful conversation. And I think that's what we're having here. And I've outlined two avenues that are available for recourse.
Richard,
would the defense have, I mean, I'm not a criminal lawyer, but would the defense have the ability to raise the argument of double jeopardy? No.
They cannot raise argument.
Well, I know
outre acquis or outre convict. And the reason I'm meaning, and that's double jeopardy. And I will say why. You raise double jeopardy when you were placed in jeopardy. And you say, I've already been placed in jeopardy. You are now putting me in further jeopardy. The law as developed by Justice of Appeal Suhan, and she was Justice Suhan as she then was, is that you are placed in jeopardy when you are in peril of being convicted. You are in peril of convicted when you are placed in the hands of the jury. In other words, upon arraignment and either the taking of evidence or something has happened. In this case, it is only at the prima. Listen, this is early stages, you know. Prima facie means it's even lower than more likely than not. It means that there is some evidence there that a jury properly directed can convict. And in this case, it did not even cross that first hurdle. Therefore, the officers were never placed in jeopardy, and a fortiori, they will not be able to raise the issue of double jeopardy. But Mr. Ragoobarsingh,
fortiori, I like that.
Yeah, because the issue is that the evidence was never presented in the first place.
It was never presented, so they were never in jeopardy. But I don't want to put, Richard, you are very close to the argument that the defense have to raise. But I see and I've noted who their defense counsel are. And I can tell you that in this case, the defense counsel will know the ground that they have to raise. But in this matter, I don't want to be seen to be advising the defense counsel, because I cannot run with the hairs.
For more than one reason. For more than one reason, Minister.
But Mr. Ragoobarsingh, you are very, very warm. But it will not be said that I have given advice in the public domain to defense counsel and what they may have to do.
I know you have another guest standing by, but I wanted your opinion on the recent 2023 report by the outgoing iteration of the Police Service Commission, which we spoke about public trust and confidence a while ago, which also did not paint a great picture about public trust and confidence in the police service, or public trust and confidence in their own safety in the public. And this seems to be a credible survey with a sample of over 2,000 people conducted by the outgoing iteration of the Police Service Commission. And with your remit as Minister of National Security dealing with police, as assigned by the Honorable Prime Minister, what are your thoughts on this? It doesn't seem that despite their best efforts or their efforts, I don't know if it's the best efforts, that the police are moving in the direction of turning that tide?
If we link it to the matter at hand, that can't be a credible submission for public confidence. This cannot be. It is something, Senator Richards, in our incarnation, the Joint Select Committee on National Security, which you know, if I recall, I think the percentage was 70%, did not have confidence. It really is not. If we are to be frank, it does not paint a picture that would encourage public confidence, this matter here, and that is why I am harping on the avenues of redress available. Things such as these, and we don't need much in Trinidad and Tobago, but things such as these fuel the fire that lights up against public confidence being built in the police service. And I must say, in a serious matter like this, it has to be all hands on deck. Let us get our act together and at least get something before the master to say, look here, we are serious. Don't you think if there was maybe one statement or two statements before the master on the day, then they could have said, well, you know, master, we have 2 more coming. We have 5 here outstanding, but something has been done. From what I have read from the reports, nothing was done.
Would this, for clarity, would this prosecutor be a police prosecutor in this case?
I do not know. I think it would have been. I think, and it would have been because police officers were involved. I would expect it would be a prosecutor from the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. Now, although I have said earlier that you cannot run with the hares and hunt with the hounds, there's another issue here that falls into play. Is it not when persons are charged that they have an expectation that they would have their day in court to have that is the proverbial sword of Damocles hanging over over their heads? Is not a serious consideration that goes towards promptitude. Let's be fair here on both sides. And I think also that the element of the weight of a matter before a court, gentlemen, hanging over your head is something that all right-thinking citizens must look at.
It's all like getting warm now, to the
Yes, I listen. I listen intently, because he owes me a call that we are going to make very soon because of what he knows and I know. So he owes me a call. So I just listen now.
Mr. Ragoobarsingh, I am always, when I am accused of owing, never a borrower or a lender be, I recall that. But it's not a serious. If we're having a serious, fair conversation, it's not a concern that these officers would have had their lives put on hold. They may have been interdicted from duty on maybe half pay, 3/4 pay, depending. And they had an interest in having the matter dealt with. And I think that was a concern that would have been brought to the attention of the master in this matter. And it is something that we need to look at. There is, there's a case called Kettleman's case. When you all have a chance, look it up. I think it's 1968. One All England reports at page 205. And in Kettleman's case, they were discussing, this is the law, this is the Court of Appeal, discussing the strain of litigation on litigants. And because they were dealing with the issue of finality of matters. And if that was a civil matter, because in Kettleman's case, it was a civil matter, so your liberty is not at stake, you can understand the value added that will come if it's a criminal matter and you apply that principle. And I think that is something that ought to be looked at seriously. And I think that prosecution in this matter, from what I have heard, could have.
Well, we're making history this morning. We have 2 senior counsels on set.
Yeah. Good morning to you, Senior. Larry Lala, how are you?
Good morning, gentlemen. Are you seeing me and hearing me clearly?
Oh, yes, we are.
Good morning, Mr. Lala. I think now that you have entered, you all are allowing me my exit. Good morning, Senior Counsel, Mr. Larry Lala.
Good morning, Minister, my friend and colleague.
My very good friend and colleague. Gentlemen, I just want to tell you all that Mr. Lala makes the best mother-in-law that I have ever tasted.
You're joking.
The best.
I think
Sorry,
Mr.
I have to
Lala
get
knows,
some of that. I have to
Mr.
get
Lala
some of
knows
that.
how to get the best mother-in-law. I don't know about making.
He claimed that he made it. Wow.
Where to get it?
Gentlemen, am I relieved this morning?
Thank you so much for being with us, Minister.
Have a good day, kid.
Have a good day, gentlemen.
Thank you, Minister.
Kindly.
Appreciate it.
All the best to you.
All right, welcome, Senior. Good morning.
Good morning. I mean, I've been listening to the discussion. I don't know what else you all want me to say. Everything has been said.
Well,
I was wondering myself.
Your initial response to the situation of the matter being dismissed by the master.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're laughing. I mean, and sometimes it's good to maintain a certain level of sobriety with you, and you're dealing with serious issues. It is a very serious issue, and I was deeply disturbed yesterday when I saw the story as published in the Guardian. I want firstly to commend your station and you gentlemen for the attention that you have brought to the issue, because it relates to a very serious problem that is facing the country right now, and that is the issue of extortion. This case being all the more serious because it involves allegedly extortion by police officers. I don't have to remind you, I don't have to remind the national community that right now we face a very difficult situation as far as crime is concerned. I believe by some counts, the murder toll as of yesterday was 573, which is extremely close to the total for last year. And December being the type of month it usually is, I believe we could expect to cross the total for last year and even for the year before. So it is very, very serious, and it is troubling. This issue of extortion, I'm sure you well know, has caused many businesses to fold and people to leave the country because of the fear in which they have been put, the fear in which their families have been put. And therefore that makes it, even more troubling. The point is that the police service cannot be expected reasonably to do everything on their own to solve crime. The police needs the assistance of the general public. And how is it going to get that assistance if the public don't have confidence in the police service? And when matters...
Or trust, don't forget the trust part.
Yeah, trust or confidence, they go hand in hand. And when developments take place as the way it took place with this matter, it serves to erode that trust, erode that confidence in the police service. From what I've read in the newspaper, this matter arose because of a difficult situation faced by the people of Sangre Grande, where apparently extortion is rampant. The people of Sangre Grande, seeing how this matter has unfolded, what confidence would they have in reporting matters of this kind to the police service? Why would they put themselves, their families, at risk of reprisals by making a report to the police service if this is what is going to happen? Now, I listened to what was being said earlier, and I listened to my good friend, Minister Scotland. And one of the important points that was not brought out was that the evidence in this matter had been reviewed by the Director of Public Prosecutions.
Yeah.
And he instructed that charges be laid. So if that is the case, there's no question about there being proper evidence upon which to base the charges. It is not any junior police officer who reviewed the evidence and said, well, yes, charge these police officers. It's no other than the office of the DPP. And if that is the case, if at that stage he was convinced in his mind that there was a proper case to present to the court and to expose these officers and their good name and put them in jeopardy of being convicted of very serious crimes, then how could the case collapse in the way it did before the court? And what is more concerning is the report that at the time that the dismissal was ordered by the master, there was no prosecutor in court.
Yep.
How could that happen? How could a prosecutor, and Minister Scotland is correct, this being police officers who are charged, the prosecutor had to be an attorney from the office of the DPP. So why was that attorney not there? And assuming that, I mean, we all have difficulties sometimes, and you can't make it to court on time or at all. Why was there not communication with the police prosecutor in court to explain to the magistrate, well, you know, look, Attorney X, Attorney Y has a difficulty this morning, and we're respectfully asking for an adjournment.
But senior counsel, Mr. Lala, would that have been the first occasion too that the prosecutor was absent, or it had to have been a continuous habit why the court made the decision that they made?
Well, it is not clear from the report. It is not clear, right? One would hope that it was the first, and it is not a pattern of conduct.
Yeah.
The point is, it cannot stop here. I agree with Minister Scotland that at no time would these officers have been put in jeopardy, and they cannot raise the issue of autrefois acquis or acquit, as some would say. And therefore, it is open to the police service to relay the charge. It is also open to the DPP under a JUPA to file an appeal in the matter and prosecute an appeal in the Court of Appeal. But this cannot end here.
Given the public interest in this and the critical issue of police public trust and confidence, and again, without judging the officers as innocent or guilty, because they have not had their day in court because the matter has been dismissed. Do you think a statement is warranted from either or both of the DPP or the Commission of Police?
Yeah, absolutely. So I see in The Guardian this morning that ACP Suzette Martin has called for a report. One hopes that is the preliminary step towards issuing a release and explaining to the public what happened. But I think importantly, the office of the DPP needs to explain what happened from their point of view, so that any shortcomings are exposed and dealt with. And there must be some sort of disciplinary action flowing from what happened here in relation to whichever prosecutor that was, you know, because let me tell you something, we need to be serious in this country. We need to get our act together. We are too small a country to have these sort of problems recurring and eroding the trust and confidence that the public have in our systems, our very important country systems. We cannot go on like this, you know, and it becomes very frustrating for everyone looking on when they see very serious charges unfolding in this manner in the court. It just cannot be right. It cannot be acceptable. And you know, we can't operate with niceties around such a very serious issue.
But because the police officers are involved, it's such an indictment into the public trust and confidence, not only in the police service, you know, but in the entire criminal justice system.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mr.
Right?
Lala,
sorry. Yes?
I had asked this question of my colleagues last week. In terms of laying charges, it can either be laid from the police perspective or from the DPP perspective. But in the case like this came from the DPP's office, right? Is it that the recommendation to lay charges, right, came from the DPP's office? Is it that the DPP can make those recommendations, but the police didn't agree with it?
Yes, but they would have to follow his advice, right? And the fact that they would have sought his advice in the first place may lead to the inference that they did not know what to do with what they had, you know, so therefore they would defer to his experience, his advice, and the advice of his office. Right, so
going somewhere with this, you know why? Because my humble opinion, and I may be totally wrong here, is that police prosecuting police, or even police charging police, or police following through on issues of discipline with police, just does not instill confidence in anyone at all.
No, absolutely, and that is why, as a matter of practice, from what I know from my years of practice before the criminal courts, is that once police officers are charged, then an attorney from the DPP's office will be assigned to prosecute, and I expect that that is what would have been done here because of the very serious charges involved. All right, so I'll be very surprised, Wendell, if the prosecutor was a police prosecutor. Mm-hmm. And if it was a police prosecutor, I would agree with you that would be totally unacceptable.
Yeah. Because
you cannot have himself prosecuting himself. Very, very wrong.
But himself does investigate himself for the Professional Standards Bureau.
Well, yes. I mean, and I agree with you, that is an issue. But from what I have seen, I don't have any reason to believe that the PSB, Professional Standards Bureau, has been operating otherwise than professionally. I mean, I have never seen any issue arise that, some wrongdoing has been unearthed there. It appears to be, and I could be wrong, but it appears to be performing the function of some degree of independence that it should perform, having regard to the nature of the charges that we're talking about, charges against police officers.
Is there a role in this for the Police Complaints Authority?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the Police Complaints Authority needs to get involved as well, so that that light of transparency could be brought to bear upon what has happened, and expose any police wrongdoing in the falling apart of the prosecution in the way it did. And I think that in the statement that the police service will issue, they must tell the public whether these officers are being disciplined, because separate and apart from the criminal charge and the standard of proof in relation to a criminal matter, there is the issue of disciplinary charges, employment charges, and a different standard of proof that operates there. So I hope that these officers are being faced with disciplinary proceedings, whether they are guilty or innocent. That is something that will be determined in those proceedings. But certainly, one would hope that those charges are ongoing and those proceedings are ongoing. I see that in the newspaper, the attorney is saying, as he's entitled to say, that they are entitled to return to service. Well, I disagree with him. It's not as simple as that. They should be made to face disciplinary charges.
On what grounds?
And we have to remember.
On what grounds?
Sorry, Paul.
They should face disciplinary proceedings on what grounds?
Well, bringing the police service into disrepute, first and foremost, because we have to remember that the evidence in this matter is not only what would have been told to the police. There's video evidence in this with audio, from what I recall from what I saw circulating on social media. That is sufficient to discipline them.
And of course also the fact that, as your colleagues, Minister Scotland said, the evidence was reviewed by the director of the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, and that office gave directive to lay charges.
Correct. That is not something that an employment tribunal ought to look at lightly, right? So one hopes that is something that is being pursued, and we should look forward to hearing more about that in the future.
Do you think there is a better approach legally in terms of the two options, one to either relay the charges or for the DPP to go via the Court of Appeal route? Do you think
the faster thing would be to relay the charges, because you file an appeal, you don't know how long it will take for that appeal to come up. In the meantime, you have memories fading, you have evidence, that could disappear, etc., etc. So it's important, and it's in the public's interest, Richard, for the most expedient route to be used to ensure that this matter is properly dealt with.
Yeah. And one of the other things, as that question was raised, is that 7 officers were charged. they may not they may not all have been part of whatever evidence that supported charges, but they would have been vicariously charged because they were there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know, and I don't want to speculate in relation to the evidence against each officer. But in his examination of the evidence, the DPP, one would expect, would have looked at the evidence against each officer separately and made a separate and individual decision in relation to charges for each officer.
All right.
You know, senior, as an officer of the court at a very high level, this must cause you some level of disquiet and pain.
No, absolutely, because at the end of the day, and I think, you know, Paul, more important than my role as an officer of the court, in these times that we live in, I attach more value to my role as a citizen. You know, we all want to have a better Trinidad and Tobago. I'm of the firm belief that a better Trinidad and Tobago is possible. We are a small island. You look at large countries that are able to get it right, and there's no reason why we cannot get it right.
You know, sometimes I have to be so tempered in what I say, but I will say this. Sometimes I wonder, based on the silence from the office of the Commissioner of Police, if the Commissioner of Police actually realizes the gravity of the situation and its impact on the credibility of police.
And how citizens feel.
I wonder sometimes, based on that silence, if the officer in the office now understands that silence is not an option under these circumstances.
Absolutely. And we have heard nothing from the Commissioner of Police. You know, ministers of government, senior police officers, they are protected. We, as we go about our daily lives, we have no protection whatsoever. We are exposed, and because of what is happening on a day-to-day basis, and touching persons who are close to each and every one of us, we live in a state of perpetual fear, and it is not good for the national psyche for us to be like that. It affects our emotional health, it affects our physical health, it affects the business community, it affects tourism, it affects every possible thing.
Yeah.
And this problem has to be dealt with. We cannot go on like this.
And this is one that shouldn't get caught up in the realm of politics. This is one that the wider public, no matter who you feel you are, who you feel you're aligned to, must be extremely concerned about. And as I said before, I keep saying, this is not about judging innocence or guilt to the officers. This is about a process that has gone remarkably awry.
Correct.
Nothing going to happen. Nothing. Remember, I said that today, right?
Yeah.
You know, and there's a point I want to make, and I don't know how many of you could identify with it. And it's something personal that I'll share, but within recent times, I have had several nightmares about being a victim of crime. And I wonder how many of our citizens are going through the same thing on a daily basis, because we go to sleep at night wondering whether this is the night we'll be victims of a home invasion. You know, I live in a gated community, but still at night I get up, I check my cameras, I look around, I don't get a proper night's sleep.
But it's not, in addition to that, senior,
you're not the only one.
Your wife and your daughter and your family have to go out and come back in.
Absolutely. And I'm not sure whether the powers that be, and I don't want to get political, I don't want to make the issue a political issue, whether they really appreciate what the citizens of this country are being touched with on a daily basis in their lives because of this uncontrolled, unchecked, and runaway crime problem that we have right now. But
yeah,
I'll add, and this is not, I'm separating this from the case we're talking about. Add corrupt officers to that equation.
Correct.
And it becomes so untenable. Senior, thanks for being with us this morning.
Thank you so much, Senior. Larry Lala.
Thank you,
for being with us. You too, all the best. Let me say good morning going out to Attorney at Law Jerome Joseph. Good morning to you, Jerome. All the best. You have a great day. Jaron Joseph. Sorry. Have a good day. Gentlemen, as we wrap it up for this Hump Day Wednesday.
Yeah.
So have a fantastic day, whatever you do. Remember to smile and laugh. It's great for your health.
Richard, I met Penny in Western Union, and she said she is in serious training for American dance.
Oh,
she
wonderful.
Said she is ready.
Y'all have a great day. Be safe. Y'all know you can call each other off here, right?
Have a wonderful day.
And the program and a little, you know.
I have the power to do this.
All right, we have power
Do this
conversation coming up.
and do this. Keep that in mind. Have a great day. Be safe.
All right, let's get into our eight o'clock news brief. Let's do that right now.
This is your news bulletin from Power 102 Digital.
This is your news update at 8 o'clock. I'm Avril Santiago. Good morning. Minister in the Ministry of National Security, Keith Scotland, said someone dropped the ball in a case that led to the release of 7 officers by the courts. A high-profile case involving 7 police officers accused of extorting businessmen in Sangre Grande collapsed in the Port of Spain North A Court, with all charges against them dismissed yesterday. The decision came after the prosecution failed to meet court orders, present crucial evidence, and ensure the attendance of key witnesses. Minister Scotland told the Power Breakfast Show this morning that all is not lost, as there are options that can be explored. He said there is an ability to appeal the matter. He also said that there is the recourse that the prosecution has to relay the charges. Meanwhile, also on the Power Breakfast Show this morning, attorney Larry Lala SC said that he was deeply disturbed by the case because it relates to a very serious problem facing the country at present, that of extortion. He said the murder toll as of yesterday was 573, and that's concerning. He also said of deep concern is the fact that extortion has caused many businesses to shut their doors. He said the matter in the case was raised as a result of crime and extortion issues faced by the people of Sangre Grande, and wondered if any reprisals would arise following the case failure. He noted that public trust in the police service will decrease significantly with cases such as this one, as the very ones tasked with citizen security are appearing in court for crime. He said it is unforgivable that a case such as this one could be allowed to collapse. Lala revealed that it is incomprehensible that the prosecutor was not present, and stated that there must be some sort of disciplinary action imposed following the collapse of the case. Investigations have been launched into the death of a 7-month-old baby at a daycare center in Tunapuna on November 18th. According to police reports, at 5:45 p.m., police received a call about an unresponsive infant at the Future Leaders Daycare Center in Tunapuna. The owner told police that at around 4:30 p.m., she bathed and fed Makia Ormsby, who then fell asleep. He was placed on a bed in the living room area. Around 5:20 p.m., Makia's mother, Brandy Ormsby, 25, came to pick him up. A worker went to get the baby, however, found the baby unresponsive. A postmortem is due to be performed today. Well, that was your update to 8 o'clock. Look out for news in full at 12 noon. I'm Avril Cynthia Bab. Good morning.
All righty, it is. Let me just move this back here. 4 minutes after the hour of 8 o'clock on this Hump Day Wednesday, the 20th day of November. And let's say good morning going out to Denise Deming. Morning, Denise. How are you?
Good morning. Something is happening because I'm hearing you on my... Okay, good morning. And I see that Nigel is there.
Yes, he is indeed.
Yes. Steve, something is happening because I'm
Yeah,
hearing...
I'm checking it out here now. I don't know what's
You're
going on.
figuring it out. All right. So good morning. I'm Denise Deming, host of Power Conversations on a Monday and Wednesday from 8 a.m. We spend time digging deeper into issues that are impacting our country. Our guest this morning is Nigel Campbell. Nigel, so happy to see you here. Welcome. And I just want to begin with a question. Who is Nigel Campbell?
Who is Nigel Campbell? I like that question. Nigel Campbell is a investigator of music. I'm also a writer. I get paid to write in newspapers and magazines. But I follow the music industry here in Trinidad and all the allied industries associated with the music. Some about the music and the business of music in Trinidad as well as the Caribbean. That's why I investigate, I learn, I write, I relay the information for those who want to listen and read.
So that's who Nigel Campbell is, someone who has a real interest in music. What do you see as the biggest challenges that we have in expanding our music industry to the global world?
Well, a couple of things are tied to this. One is in the sense, what do you call it, volume? The music industry is a kind of volume business. So that you have to have the most amount of streams, most amount of records, that kind of popularity kind of index. And we always start with our local industry. But if our numbers are very small, we kind of get overlooked, unfortunately. And yes, there have been some outliers. Certainly, Jamaica is a classic example, just double the size of Trinidad, but they have a global presence in terms of their native music. But key to any distribution and any kind of globalization of music are the people behind the music. And fortunately or unfortunately, we don't have many key critical people behind the music, pushing our music. And another thing with the music industry is talent is one thing, but I think critically, one of the biggest things is that kind of connection, the who you know and who knows you. And if that is not in place, there's only so far we can go. So it's a matter of connection, it's a matter of the volume size, and also something that people don't take very seriously. It's also a matter of quality. So quantity, quality is important, and certainly connection.
Okay, Nigel, let me just reach out to Steve because I'm still hearing that repetition, so it's an echo, so I'm not hearing you properly, to be able to respond and have
Steve just stepped out.
So Steve, let's see what we can do to stop that second set of noise that I'm hearing. What I'm hearing really is an echo.
Yeah, but Steve just stepped out of the room here, so I'm alone in the room, and I hear what you're hearing, but I hope the listeners aren't hearing that double.
Exactly.
That's kind of problem. I'm listening on a very small speaker, but
you're also hearing it.
Yes.
Yes.
And I hear what you're hearing, but I hope the listeners aren't hearing that double. Yeah. I'm actually hearing you delayed. It's unfortunate.
Yes, because that impacts my ability to concentrate on what you're saying. Anyway, I know you from Jazz Artists on the Greens. How did that begin?
Jazz Artists on the Greens began in 2003. A musician, Sean Thomas, he was a musician. He used to have little shows and concerts, and he decided to have a concert at DCFA in San Augustine. And along with his in-laws, his brothers-in-law, they decided to move from inside to outside. Now the phone is ringing. Look, chaos. And 1 second. And in 2003, Sean decided to move outside. He decided to move outside of the DCFA building onto the lawn, onto the greens as it was. And from there, the idea of musicians, Caribbean musicians playing together. Sean just wanted to play with musicians. It grew and grew. So over time, it expanded and expanded. I, on the other hand, didn't come in until about 2007, 2008. But I saw the potential of the event, and I saw that the idea of utilizing, kind of common sense in business could take this to great places. And 2025 will be our 20th edition. We had to close down for COVID, obviously. But in 20 years, effectively, we've been growing and growing the brand, growing the industry, and we kind of stuck around because some other festivals that have come up have not survived those 20 years. And as a consequence, we're proud of that fact. But I think critically for us, we're trying to get the idea that live music is still critically important. A lot of music, of course, is recorded and people sing to tracks and that kind of stuff. But the idea of live musicians playing live music is one of those things that we really cherish and hope that audiences cherish also in terms of its growth.
And Is Steve with you? Because the echo
Yeah, I
hasn't
think
stopped.
that's coming from your end. I think you have to get headphones. Yeah, so the speakers that you're listening on is what's coming over.
So maybe
That's the only thing I can come up with. It's not from my
maybe
end.
we have to cancel this program, Steve. You know,
I don't know.
because this is how I've always done it. You know.
Maybe your volume is just a bit too much. Maybe.
Okay, Steve, I've turned my volume down.
All right.
Quite a lot, so I don't know.
And you can hear me well.
I could hear you.
Yeah, that will work.
Hmm?
That will work, I think.
Okay, thank you very much, Steve. And we have to work with it as it is. So, Nigel, I do apologize for this being so problematic this morning, but we will
Digital
continue.
radio.
You were talking about how jazz artists on the Greens began,
Yes.
and you used the name Sean Summers. Can you tell me anything about him?
Well, he's migrated, right? There was a point within the evolution of the event and the evolution of the company, Production One Limited, when he said, "Okay, I'm gonna go on a different path," and he's ultimately migrated. He's living in the States, and he's doing music out there, and he's formed a non-profit, and that's where he is right now. But the rest of the group stayed in Trinidad, and we've been developing and growing the brand. Of course, we've also developed some other events within the Production One Limited group, Songbirds Live, One Night Stand, and some other events I think we've done. Plus, we do event management and concert production.
So, Nigel, a question. You said you've done it for 20 years. How many artists do you think have been part of Jazz Artists on the Greens?
We actually did the numbers. Trinidadians as well as Caribbean artists, as well as foreign-based Caribbean people. It's been about 100 people overall. We actually did the number crunch a couple of weeks ago to see how much impact the event had, and effectively 99% of the artists locally who call themselves jazz artists have been on the show, as well as a number of young musicians and developing musicians, singers, as well as, because one of the things that we did see was the idea of Caribbean musicians being part of this whole process. So we've had musicians from the French Antilles, Martinique, Guadeloupe, Barbados, St. Lucia, Grenada, as well as artists who are based in Canada, England, United States. And what was the other one? We had another fancy one that escapes me at this second, but I think it's not Guyana, it's Suriname or Curacao, one of those islands. But we've been working to develop a wide cohort of musicians who call themselves jazz musicians, because, well, I actually consider Caribbean jazz a unique genre as opposed to what the rest of the world calls jazz, which is, of course, the American thing. We utilize our rhythms, our unique rhythms and melodies, and then improvise on top of that. So we could improvise on top of a calypso or soca, or as well as original music. But there's something about our native rhythms, our Caribbean rhythms, that are important in terms of developing what I call Caribbean jazz.
So, Nigel, what role do you think it plays in our music ecosystem to have this jazz artist on the green as an annual activity?
One of the things that we recognized over the time, as I said, in terms of just being more than an entertainment vehicle for everybody, a kind of leisure activity, which generates money for the economy. Certainly the government of Trinidad has recognized that the creative industries, the music industry, is one of those kind of growth areas that can be used to diversify the economy away from oil and gas. Jazz Artists in the Greens, because we've been around so long and we've been doing it, and as I said, we've been growing, probably not, let me just put this out there one time. Our jazz festival is not as large as our carnival. Carnival is the hugest thing in terms of Trinidad music. And it absorbs a lot of the DNA, a lot of the energy, a lot of the oxygen in terms of advertising, sponsorship, and other things. But we are part and parcel of that kind of festival atmosphere and the festival industry, as it was, music festival industry in Trinidad and certainly in the Caribbean. And we've recognized also that more recently there's this thrust, certainly by the government, to include music festivals as a kind of attractive thing. This current policy is to link the creative industries with tourism. It's not something I'm a fan of, but that's what it is. But we also fit into that portfolio. So also So in addition to being an incubator for musicians, we're also part and parcel of the idea that festivals are important for the kind of wider economy in terms of bringing people in terms of having a kind of multiplier effect. You know, somebody has to sell the corn soup, somebody has to sell the wine, somebody has to sell the garments and that kind of stuff. So within the whole business of the economy of Trinidad and Tobago, music festivals, including jazz artists and degrees, do have a role to play. As I said, it's not as large as Carnival. Carnival, by some experts, probably generates about $1 billion in the economy in terms of turnover and multiplier effect. Our numbers are not that large, but they are impactful all the same.
But when you talk about jazz in terms of Trinidad, is that traditional jazz? What kind of jazz is it?
Well, as I said, we have been focusing on a number of years on this idea of this jazz that is unique to Trinidad and Tobago. Certainly, there's a generation of musicians who grew up listening to American jazz, and they learned it and they, mimicked it as well as they kind of improvised on their own way. But certainly by the 60s, a number of Caribbeans had moved to England and they were experimenting with playing jazz as it was, but playing calypsos with a kind of jazz aesthetic, a kind of jazz language. And one of those pioneers was Clive Zander. When he returned in the 60s, he met up with Schofield Pilgrim, who was a teacher at QRC, who had a similar idea of utilizing Caribbean music and Caribbean rhythms and improvising upon it and using that as a base for jazz. And over time of Zander's presence, as well as some other innovators, the Boothman brothers, Ralph Robertson, more recently Michael Lauchutong Ming of Elan Parley, and Etienne Charles, who's based in the States. We've been developing our own brand of jazz, as it was. And in the Caribbean, in Cuba, they have their own brand of jazz. In Haiti, they do that. In the French Caribbean, they do that. So all Caribbean nations, the DR, Puerto Rico, all Caribbean nations have utilized the idea of their native rhythms being important to the development of this music called jazz, as opposed to the American thing, which works on the blues. American jazz is based on the blues and the blues scale as it was. But we've said, okay, we can do our own thing, but there's a kind of element of expanded harmony, expanded chords, improvisation. But that music is interesting and it's growing. It's not as I said, we can't compete with soca directly, but it also creates a kind of aesthetic that a number of people find attractive in terms of building our unique music here in Trinidad and Tobago.
It's growing. It's not as I said. So, Nigel, how do these live music events impact our cultural landscape? Is it encouraging? What do you think it does to our cultural landscape?
One of the things about it, especially because the music industry has evolved over the years, for artists, playing live is where they actually earn money, right? I mean, they have the recorded industry where long ago used to sell records, sell CDs. And of course, we have radio, where I am right now on digital, Spotify, and these kind of streaming services. But in terms of an artist development and artist growth, and certainly the artist economic growth, live music is where it is, right? That is the one constant that makes money for artists. And of course, having a deep catalog also helps, so that live music is important for the growth of the industry, in that the creators of the music are the ones who will be growing economically, right? If it is only left to streaming and radio, the radio stations make money, the streaming services make money, advertisers generate that kind of business back and forth. But music goes to the background. But with live music, that is important for them. But as I said, we have a number of live music events, including those massive fetes at Carnival time, massive concerts that we know about in Carnival time. Those are all part of this music industry, and that really and truly is what's driving. I could suggest that Carnival is driven more so by parties and fetes than it is by one-off shows or the sale of music or that kind of stuff. So that the live music industry, I think, is critically important for the growth of our music industry, solely because the artists themselves, the creators, are the ones who actually make money at that point, and I can't fault them for being part of that.
So then our live music industry is significant, and it's not just about Carnival.
No, it is broader than Carnival, that's correct.
Okay, so tell us, what other things do you observe in our live music industry?
Well, as I said, it is varied. I mean, one thing about Trinidad, I mean, historically, I know everybody from all over the world came to Trinidad and they left part of themselves here, part of their heritage here. but we've also absorbed everything globally. So we actually have opera, and we have high choral music and that kind of stuff. So that we, as well as indigenous genres, chutney and kaiso and reggae and that kind of stuff, and all the new variations of reggae and zest and steam and that kind of stuff. So that there is always something to be said about live performances. One of the things that happens, however, is that for live performances, you have to have a space to perform, right? And I think that may be a slight deficiency right now in that we can build a stage in a savannah, in a park, in a green space, and have live performances. We have technical crews to make these things happen. But what we call purpose-built spaces, theaters, halls, and that kind of stuff, they're relatively limited. And I think critically for what I would consider the kind of base level, which is the individual artist, the kind of solo artist, a small group who's very independent, they have to perform in spaces. So we think about performing in bars and that kind of stuff. In Port of Spain, of course, famously, we know that one of the most important spaces is Cafe Blue. I don't know if I could call the name on radio, but Carl Jacob, pioneering soca artist himself, he developed this space down in Port of Spain. And it's one of the spaces, one of the few spaces, I should say, where live music happens on a frequent basis. I think that is one of the things that has to be developed in terms of our industry. Those kind of performance spaces, we don't necessarily have many, right? Because a purpose-built space is a purpose-built space. Beyond that, then you have to build the infrastructure for live performance. And there's a kind of significant jump in terms of the cost of doing that. So it's important to have live music. It's more important to have live music spaces to perform.
You're saying that Cafe Blue is one of those few live music spaces that occur for the entire year.
Correct. In Port of Spain, yes.
Yeah.
There are a couple others in Chaguanas. There are others, I think, in San Fernando. And there's other spaces around the country. Because I have something I discovered that I was going Princestown an evening and coming back to Port of Spain, and we kind of stopped. And so there was a band playing in a bar, effectively, coming from Moruga. And the place was ram cram, but it was off of our northern radar. But if you lived in that area, that seemed to. Sure that there are performance spaces all over the country, both in Trinidad and in Tobago. But in terms of measuring them, and that it involves the copyright organizations making sure these places are licensed. I'm not sure that information is widely publicly available, but I do know that in Port of Spain, as I said, Cafe Blue is one I would consider the premier live performance space in Port of Spain. Stage, equipment, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, well, yes, and Mars Camp. Steve is reminding me, Mars Camp on the Avenue was a space like that, and unfortunately they burned down and Carl effectively took over the live space in Port of Spain.
Well, what I'm hearing you say is that we certainly have the musicians.
I'm not hearing
and
you.
what might be interesting is to have more live spaces. But that requires business investment.
Mm.
And I'm at a kind of loss when it comes to people investing in cultural development. What are your thoughts on that? Investing in cultural development.
That is one of the things. I mean, let's be honest. That is, I think, critical for any industry. You have to have investment, right? Whether it's oil and gas or manufacturing, or the creative industries. I want to say to his credit, the government for many years, since the 90s, have been utilizing incentives and legislation, and of course, in education to develop the creative industries, the music and entertainment industries. Back in the 90s, we used to call it. Then it created in the 2000, about 10 years ago, like 2012 or 2013, 14. They created this more recent company called Creative TT. We've had our companies before, TTN. And the function of those companies was to kind of incentivize businesses to invest in the creative industry. And of course, and foreign investors to invest within, whether it's to develop spaces. They wanted to bring, at one point, I always remember reading that they wanted Dave and Buster, which is a very popular space abroad, to come to Trinidad and let that be a space for entertainment. So there is clearly a kind of, is the right word? There's minimal investment from the private sector, from the non-music industry private sector within the industry, and it's kind of hard. And I could just tell you that as a promotion company, that's one of our main functions, trying to convince sponsors, investors, funders, partners to invest in certainly our event and invest in the artists in the event, because a lot of events and a lot of the business of music is not free. And sometimes not all the time, the returns aren't necessarily right there in front of your face. So that what people see in terms of a lot of private sector investment, and certainly what we see in sponsorship, we see, of course, the alcohol companies, the telecom companies, not so much the financial institutions, which are like the biggest industries, less so even the energy companies, getting involved and putting sponsorship. A lot of these things are allied to the kind of corporate social responsibility as opposed to just direct funding. The government has created incentives, tax rebates and tax incentives to let companies put money into creative industries. It hasn't been it hasn't taken up as much as possible, because I think a lot of businesses want to see volume. So outside of Carnival, which you could see a volume of people, tens of thousands of people, it becomes lower and lower and lower. So it's a matter of innovation on the part of the business people in the industry to convince the private sector that it's there. And one other thing I just want to throw this in. A lot of investment decisions are based upon data, right? And forever and ever and ever, it's been a kind of continuous cry that there's no data to justify the creative industries and music industries. We can see data from the manufacturing industry. We can see data from the energy industry. We can see from the advertising industry. But the music industry here, whether it's live or recorded, that data is not forthcoming, it's not compiled, and that becomes critical to how people see the music industry. They don't see it as an investment, as a kind of great return on investment. And unfortunately, we kind of lose out in a sense.
So, Nigel, tell me a little bit more about the kind of data you are referring to.
Well, I mean, the kind of serious critical things. How much money did your event make? Right? A lot of people, for whatever reason, people aren't necessarily willing to give that information up, right? I've subscribed to this magazine abroad called Pool Star, which tracks the live music event industry all over the world. And as a matter of fact, you perform in, whether it's a small theater, like a 400-person theater, or a stadium, like a Taylor Swift or a Coldplay kind of thing, all those numbers become available, as well as the gross revenue from these events, and it's available publicly. We don't advertise those figures, so nobody knows how much money is made, and profit is another thing, and of course that's tied into taxing and whether or not people want to give that information. Pay taxes, that's what I'm going to say. But I think critically, the numbers in terms of volume, we want to know revenue streams. We want to see how much people pass through a thing. And of course, the whole economic impact, the kind of multiplier effect of these things. Researchers have done the work. Keith Nurse, Joanne Tull, Suzanne Burke, and some others have done the work. But, it's not, they all say the same kind of thing. There was minimal data points to get the information. It's a lot of work to create the information, but it's not widely available and it's not frequent. So if I ask the question, how many bets for Carnival generated money and what's the revenue streams? Promoters may or may not give you that information. So as a consequence, we do kind of estimates and that kind of stuff to work out whether or not we have revenue kind of
I would be a
for investors.
Okay, but I'll be making notes.
So
you get the question.
Getting some feedback here.
Yes, I got.
We're getting some feedback. We're getting a full conversation that is going on in the background.
I don't know what's happening here.
I don't know what's going on.
Welcome to the wonderful world of digital radio.
Full conversation.
Where is that coming from?
Nigel, I'll tell you from now that I want to have this conversation with you again. So I'm going to be inviting you again to have this conversation. Because I don't even think right now that Steve and Paul are understanding that we're hearing their I think it's gone now.
It's gone now.
It's gone now, yeah.
I'm
not
sitting
gone
here.
now, it's come back.
Yeah, I'm sitting here and I'm just as
Nigel,
baffled.
you were talking about the data and
Yeah.
that some people, there's some level of data. But what I'm hearing is that there's an opportunity now for us to create a method, a system to get the data. Would you see that as a private sector creation? Is that something that a young entrepreneur can do? Or is that something that you think should be a government issue? What are your thoughts on that?
Actually, I had a conversation with one of those researchers, Dr. Tull, about this exact same question. I mean, the reasons why the data is minimal in terms of one, as I said, is it's hard to get data, it's hard to quantify and collect it. And of course, there's a kind of willingness or unwillingness to provide the data in terms of some of the stakeholders in the industry. The government has as a role this company that they had created called Creative TT and Music TT. And when it was first formed, one of the functions was actually to do data retrieval. They were under the Ministry of Trade, and they're also supposed to have some data work. But I think it is certainly something that a private sector entrepreneur can do, right? It's a lot of work. It's a lot of building trust and building these kind of relationships where data will be secure. Data will be, although it will be shared in terms of gross numbers, there will be a certain some sense of trust and with certain, because we're dealing with kind of proprietary information. That is something that has to build over time, unfortunately or fortunately. But I think there is an opportunity certainly within the private sector to become data collectors, to become people who do the economic impact assessments on a frequent basis for any and every event. We do economic impact assessments for Tobago Jazz, and they do it, of course, for the jazz festivals in St. Lucia and St. Kitts and that kind of stuff. But in terms of Trinidad, whether it's a small event, whether it's a large event, a series of events, that is something that can be done. I think it's more appropriate for the private sector to do it. And of course, these numbers have to be honest. So we can't just make up numbers and go with that, because it has an impact in terms of how the economy works back and forth if you don't have fair and clear numbers. But a private sector, this can be a private sector thing as opposed to a government thing. Government has problems in terms of getting simple data with our CSO and other things. So private sector would work well for this.
Yeah. It's a great idea, Nigel, because there are a number of live events. And if we had an idea of who attended, how many people attended, you'd be able to then see the patterns and then be able to make better decisions. And, Nigel, it's such a fantastic idea, because one of my issues with our country is that too many things are just not data driven. Too many things are, I think so, or I don't think so.
That gut feeling, I feel it's going to make money, so I'll do it, yeah. But I have to, let me just stick this pin in here. I was reading a business book that suggested, although data is the critical thing in terms of making decisions, certainly now, some CEOs make gut decisions and they just say, I have an idea, I want to do it, and they do it. And sometimes because if everything was purely data driven, you'll have 100% success all the way through. People will make decisions that make sense, as it was. But sometimes a lot of people don't make decisions, although they do have data. Some of our corporations here in Trinidad have created products that flopped, as it was, and have done service and created ideas that have flopped. There is some space for kind of gut decisions, some kind of thing. I'm seeing a thing here, I'm sure this is going to work. I'm going to make it work. But you are correct. I think part and parcel of the kind of new economy that we have, which is supposed to be a data-driven economy as opposed to like purely commodities, digging oil and gas out of the ground, that should be one of those kind of growing industries in Trinidad and Tobago. The idea of data and interacting with the people who provide the data so that you get accurate data. I think that's an important role and something to look forward to.
Yes, I do hope that we transition to a more data-driven decision-making process. And you're quite right. It can't always be data-driven. There are times when your gut is right. And sometimes you just need to go with your gut. So I am clear on that, but I really would love to see more data-driven decision-making. And this is not just in the entertainment sector. I think we need a lot more data-driven decisions for all kinds of things, transportation, all kinds of things. But let us not transition there. I want to just shift the conversation away from what we've been talking there and just ask about your podcast, Music Matters, the Caribbean edition. Tell us about that.
Yeah, myself and Laura Dorich Phillip, who she used to work at Loop TT, and she was a journalist for many years. Certainly one of the long-standing and prominent journalists here in Trinidad. And I always say probably one of the most prominent ones in the Caribbean. Years ago, we used to have these conversations and we would talk for like an hour on the phone, just talking about the business of music more than anything else, as opposed to personal details of an artist's life. And she said, no, we should put this into a podcast. So it was like, what is this, Thanksgiving time, about 5 years ago, we went online, bought some microphones, we had a laptop, we had the software, and our first conversation was about soca. And this was, I think, in probably like December of, I think it's 5 years ago. I could be killed for that. And we started on that idea about soca's Caribbean music. But we wanted to focus more on the development of the industry of music, and certainly in the wider Caribbean. So we've been, over the years, being able to have conversations with, everybody from the researchers, as I spoke about, to people in the business. And more recently, we've been having conversation with DJs in England, Shawnee B and BBC One Extra, and Mike Aline, who's a former professor at Tennessee State University, talking about, because he's done his work in terms of his professional work as an academic is about the music industry, and he's done a lot. Of course, he's focused. He's born in England, Bajan parents, back in Barbados now, but been focused on the Caribbean music industry. So he's one of my favorite guests in terms of having these conversations. And we speak about the business of music, and it's one of those kind of things that has grown over time, where seemingly people aren't necessarily interested in the kind of nitty-gritty of the business. I mean, I guess it's sexier to talk about their personality, what they did and what they did not do over the weekend. But I think if you're going to be serious about the industry of music, we have to have those kind of conversations. And so whether we're talking about broadcasting, whether we're talking about live, whether we're talking about recording, whether we talk about festivals, including talking about the whole government interaction, that is the kind of thing that we've been doing over the past 5 years. More recently, Laura has, she got a job in Turks and Caicos. So we've actually stalled the podcast for about a year, but we will be coming back online before the end of the year, because Carnival is coming up. We have to talk about the business of music in terms of Carnival music. And there are a lot of innovations that are happening in the music industry, certainly, that we have to kind of keep up with. It's information, and I think information is power. We have a number of artists and as well as people within the ministry who have listened to our podcast, and we're on all the platforms, on Spotify and Apple, Amazon, name it, we're on it. Music Matters, the Caribbean edition.
Okay, I was about to ask you about the name, Music Matters, the Caribbean edition. What was the thinking behind the name?
Actually, it was nothing spectacular. I just asked Laura, okay, what's the name of what would you like the name to be? And she said Music Matters, and that was the end of that. And I Googled it, and of course, BBC has a Music Matters, and I said, well, nah, we're the Caribbean edition. So that was the additional extra words and thing. But the Music Matters, from her point of view, it's more than just simply I wrote a song. It's the whole process, and what does it mean in terms of I wrote a song? How do I make money from making that song? So we wanted to go behind the scenes, as I said. So that is how she came up with the title, Laura, that is. Music Matters. We delve into what makes the music industry in the Caribbean work, as well as what does it not work.
All right, Nigel.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes.
I have to bring this session to an end. So, Nigel, I'll be in touch. Thank you ever so much for being here. We have some issues to work through. So, goodbye.
Thank you very much. All the best to you.
All right. All the best to you, Nigel. All right. It is 38 minutes after the hour of 8 o'clock. So Charles is ready in the building, but let's get into our Caribbean news desk.